hub airports. Schiphol's got 6. You know, it's quite routine to have 8 in America. We have got to do it. This is absolutely vital for economic growth.
I mean, Heathrow's the busiest airport, one of the busiest airports in the world, though. I mean, you know, you can't make... And it doesn't work as well as it should. And so if you start making it even busier, it's going to work even less well.
More runway. But you wouldn't have a new runway, no extra... You'd have extra terminals. Now, I'm all in favour of it. Whether it ever happens, you've got internecine warfare between Labour mayor and the like. But I want to talk lots today about the out-of-control shoplifters. You cannot miss... You cannot ignore what is going on with violent,
absolutely ridiculous,
brazen shoplifting.
Crazy. It's all coming up on Julia Hartley-Brewer's show. We'll be back tomorrow. See you at 6.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of the common sense talk, as you know. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and whether you are listening on DAB+ radio, whether you are listening on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it is, as always, great to have your company. Very much appreciate you joining me. I'm with you all the way until 1 o'clock, and there's an awful lot to talk about. Of course, particularly after that big growth speech from Rachel Reeves yesterday. The Prime Minister is facing a bitter rift within the Labour Party after the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, announced the government's backing for a third runway at Heathrow. Among the measures she announced that would boost growth, she claims, but she's now facing a battle, as is the Prime Minister, with the London Mayor Sadiq Khan. He said he'll fight against the plans. And Ryanair boss Michael O'Leary, no stranger to some plain talking, has said she hasn't got a clue and that the runway won't even be ready before 2050, which I think is an optimistic date, frankly, Michael O'Leary. Also, of course, staying on the subject of airlines, horrific news we all woke up to this morning out of Washington, D.C. Dozens of people, realistically over 60 people, feared to have been killed after a passenger jet carrying 64 people collided mid-air with a helicopter carrying 3 service personnel and crashed into a river at Washington, D.C. Search has gone on overnight. Realistically, given the plunging cold temperatures, 1 degree temperatures in the Potomac River in Washington, highly unlikely that anyone would have been found alive, and certainly now, many hours later, certainly unlikely now. But we'll keep up to date on that. We'll keep you posted on any developments on that. Also going to be talking about, illegal channel migrants, because, they're often in the news. Latest revelation about how our money is being spent on them shows that we are spending £3,000 a day providing new clothes and shoes to illegal channel migrants. I suppose their clothes got wet on the way, didn't they? And not allowed to bring your hand baggage in to the dinghies. Some are also offered free mobile phones. But the Home Office says the £4 million bill over 3 years is justified. Maybe to them. And we're also going to be talking about how more than 2.4 million people are getting the highest level of incapacity benefits with no requirement to seek work. And I also want to ask you about today just the extraordinary scale of shoplifting that we are seeing on our streets these days, in our stores. I mean, you cannot miss it. I literally watch people shoplifting. I will challenge them. The store security guards can barely do anything. They're worried they'll get assaulted, they'll lose their jobs. They're basically often advised by their bosses, please do not tackle shoplifters. It is basically free, take what you want time for shoplifters, brazenly stealing, openly stealing, not even covering their faces anymore, hundreds of pounds worth of goods, and assaulting shop staff as well. Retail bosses have said this is now out of control. These people fear no consequences. And what a surprise, because just in the last half an hour or so, we've got the latest stats from on crime, the official statistics, showing that shoplifting offences did rise by 23% in the last year compared with 2023, and is the highest figure since current police recording practices began. Those, by the way, are the shoplifting offences that are actually recorded. Many shopkeepers don't even bother anymore because they know the police are going to do nothing about it. I want to hear from you. What would you do to tackle this? I know we've got all the big topics. You can call in about Heathrow runway. You can call in about growth. You can call in about any of the topics we are talking about today. But in particular, I'd like to hear from you. What would you do to tackle this issue? We basically legalised shoplifting for under 100 quid, then under 200 and 250 quid. We're now told there's a crackdown. I ain't seen it on my street. My local high street still has shop workers, many of them women, who are so fearful they actually lock the doors for certain hours of the day and just let in individual customers at a time if they look like they're going to be actually paying customers and not the regulars who come in pretty much every day to steal goods. Often it's organised criminals as well. I want to hear from you. What would you do to tackle this? I'd love to hear from you if you run a shop, if you've worked in a shop, you've had to deal with this. I'd love to hear from you, particularly if you are a police officer. Are you tearing your hair out? Don't have to give your real name about the abject failures to deal with anything to do with this. I want to hear from you. If you, like me, you watch it happening in your local supermarket and no one does anything about it. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. You can send us a message on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Delighted to say Philip Ingram is joining me. Philip Ingram, MBE, I should add, former senior military intelligence officer. I will come to the shoplifting story with you, but there are lots of other stories I want to get to you with you first. As an ex-military man, what's happened in Washington? Very, very distressing. We fear many, many dead. We are talking about 67 people in total, 64 people on the plane, 3 US soldiers in the helicopter that appeared to collide with each other in Washington, D.C. and crashed into the Potomac River. Icy cold conditions. It happened at 9 p.m. Washington time. Some 300 responders are joining forces to be searching through the wreckage, in the desperate hope that there would have been any survivors. Certainly by this time, realistically, there will be no survivors.
Yeah, realistically. And the important thing is there's going to be an awful lot of rumour, there's going to be an awful lot of speculation, there's going to be an awful lot of conspiracy theories going around. We just don't have the facts at the moment. We know that. It
appears to be a terrible accident. Judging from what we've got some recordings from the flight tower to sort of, have you seen that jet?
And
the helicopter?
And it's a very, very congested piece of airspace around the airport, and it seems like a tragic accident. The US military helicopter looks as if it was one from a flight that specialises in VIPs out of the Department of Defence, but again that hasn't been confirmed. All we know is that two aircraft collided and both have crashed.
Particularly disturbing is there was a ice skating competition, and there were a list of 13 skaters, many of them children, who were said to have been on the plane, which is a particular concern for everybody, I think.
Yeah, it's completely shocking. No one gets on a plane, whether you're travelling for business or for pleasure, or you get teams going on expecting it to crash. And
airline safety is
very good indeed. And the Black Hawk helicopter has got an amazing safety record. The airline's got an amazing safety record. So
Donald Trump messaged on his Truth Social site that he believed this shouldn't have happened. Looks like an accident that should have been prevented. But we do know one thing about, we talk so much about, lessons will be learned, whether it's whatever the big story is in Britain. One place where lessons really are often learned is in the airline industry, isn't it? They've got a very different... Matthew Said wrote a brilliant book, black box thinking, thinking like your airline industry in terms of, instead of going like at hospitals, this is going wrong, let's cover that up, or let's try and put our head in the sand, or not, or oh well, someone who's going to go on and murder a load of people has been interviewed by Prevent 3 times, so he doesn't fit a category, so we're not going to do anything about it. The airline industry work together, don't they? And they want to know exactly what happened to prevent the next one.
Yeah, and the thing that comes into all of this is aircraft are operated by human beings, and human beings, no matter how many lessons learned that you have, no matter how many examples are out there, no matter how well trained people are,
people make mistakes.
People make mistakes.
So robots, to be fair. In odd defense, but
they do. But
it does appear to be a terrible tragedy.
It could well be. We wait to see what the investigation is. We hope that they might find some survivors, but as you say, it's highly unlikely.
It's very unlikely at this point, isn't it? We'll keep you up to date on any developments on that story, obviously. Let's talk about airports closer to home. Heathrow Airport. It sounds glib, doesn't it? But we are a station with opinion. We are we are a station that covers the news. But I know a lot of other stations have covered pretty much only this terrible crash overnight in America. But there's a lot going on in this country, in particular in the wake of Rachel Reeves' big Grove speech. It hasn't been met with great joy and fanfare by many people in business. You can talk a good game, and your Oxford-Cambridge corridor, and your extra funding for this and that, and even a third runway at Heathrow is all very well. But if you're going to tax us for every extra employee we hire, you could put an extra 25 billion in total in taxes on national insurance. If you're going to, capital gains tax is going to be ridden, and you put on new labour laws under the Employment Rights Bill, and it's not about bosses want to exploit workers, but basically ain't going to be able to get rid of people who are no good. We're going to be sued to the end of time. Then you're going to make it very hard for us to expand. And we can already see what is happening. The contraction in the labour market is already happening. But one of the key messages we got yesterday was, as expected, Rachel Reeves didn't give just her blessing to the third runway at Heathrow. She said the government now backed the third runway at Heathrow. Noticeable that the Energy Secretary, Ed Miliband, vehemently against this project, wasn't there. But the Prime Minister, he was chatting about it at PMQs quite happily an hour or so later. He had voted against it, 7 years ago, quite happily. Nothing's changed.
The hypocritical nature of government policy that's coming in at the moment. He'd voted against it, Rachel Reeves voted against it. Most of the front bench of the government had in some way disrupted the previous government's approach to trying to get a third runway. All because it was purely political. Now they're in government, they're supporting it. But nothing's going to come in this year. Nothing's going to come in for at least another decade. And the Prime Minister's turning around saying we will feel more money in our pockets this year. Nothing he's doing is going to achieve that. He's getting more people in the dole. We've seen Lloyds Bank closing lots of branches. Tesco's laying more people off. WH Smith looking to sell its high street shops and everything else.
I think
Jobs
no
are going
one's going to be missing W.H. Smith. I don't want anyone at W.H. Smith to lose their job, but
the jobs, and there's not going to be more money going into individuals' pockets this year. The government just doesn't seem to have a coherent policy, and they've split the government. Sadiq Khan is totally against it.
Well, I mean, he's a London man.
Ed Miliband didn't turn up for the vote.
Well, it's didn't turn up for the speech. I thought the best comments was Michael O'Leary did an interview on Sky News, and he basically said Rachel Reeves hasn't a clue. He said Heathrow's a dead cat. He said he called her Rachel rubbish. I mean, he never minces his words, does he? There she is trying to distract everybody with a press conference. He said wittering on about starting a consultation on the mythical dead cat known as the third runway at Heathrow. Please understand that this won't come in till 2040 or 2050 at the earliest. This won't deliver growth, not this year, not in the life of the current government, not even in the life of the next government. And this is the reality. Now, one of the problems we've got in this country is that no government commits to things that need to be done, like building a new reservoir, new power station, gas power station, new runway. They don't head, railway lines. They don't build anything. Railway lines people actually want and need, not necessarily HS2. They don't commit to anything that's not going to give them the glory in the next 4 or 5 years, which is a fundamental problem in our system. And that's why people go, let's have a strong man like Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin. Yeah, that's not the answer. The answer is what we need is grown-up politicians who do wise things. But we've also had, you get a bunch of people, whether they're eco-fanatics or they live nearby, and they don't want these projects. And I completely understand that. I wouldn't like my home to be compulsory purchased. I completely understand that. However, we're a small country. We need to have some of these projects built, and there's going to be someone affected. I'm a big fan of taxpayers' money being used to very generously compensate those people who are negatively impacted. I think that's stakeholders, I don't know. But the key thing is we don't build anything anywhere, ever. We do need a third runway at Heathrow. We need massive expansion of a lot of our infrastructure. But it is true, even with the government backing it, there'll be legal challenge after legal challenge. Even with their change in the planning rules, legal challenge after legal challenge. It is very unlikely. It's a massive project. They're not just laying a bit of extra tarmac. It's a bigger project that involves moving motorways, for goodness sake. But fundamentally, I mean, we need to have a major international hub airport with more than 2 sodding runways, like every other major country has. And we need to get with the programme. But what I love is that this is coming up against their net zero commitments, which will 100% legally, not just morally, in their view, but legally forbid that runway to be built. It's insane.
And those are the first court cases that'll come through, because the government will have to prove its figures. It hasn't done the detail behind it. In Rachel Reeves' defence, she did announce building more reservoirs, but what she hasn't done is anything which is investing today. And one of the areas that they could do is defence, because you start spending defence money today,
we need more money.
We need more. It'll create more jobs today. It'll cause industry to grow today.
I don't think it gives jobs to people who vote Labour. I think that's what their concern would be.
Well, a lot of them do, because it's manufacturing industry, and it's it's the steel industry. They will get a lot from it.
We closed down our ability to make virgin steel.
Well, exactly. I know that's
we literally every single. It's not even that the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. The left hand doesn't even know what the left hand's doing, and that's the same for all of the governments in the last 20 or 30 years. I just don't believe it's going to happen. I mean, we know, major Labour donors, your Dale Vinces, and Sadiq Khan, massively opposed to this. And again, they claim this is all over climate issues. Again, there's noise pollution. I'm probably going to be, if there's another runway, I'm probably going to be able to hear in my home, which is miles away from Heathrow. I still hear some planes. Yeah, it's a cost of doing business.
It is.
You know what?
But but there doesn't seem to be any consistency across the government. There's no consistency in the policies that they had when they were in opposition compared to with what they're doing now.
Not at all.
They've lied to the electorate to get in. Now that they're in, there is no consistency across different departments and what they're trying to pull together to achieve the growth that they want to achieve. This is a government that is just running around trying to do as much as just do stuff to make it look
it's
busy.
Not joined up thinking. There's no coherent strategy. They say there is, but there isn't, because they're all mutually exclusive. I mean, just added to that, just the water bills we now learn are going to rise by an average of £123 a year in April. I mean, that's, they're building some reservoirs. We're paying for it. Look, we're going to end up paying for it. But what annoys me is you get the bosses and the boards and the shareholders and these major water companies, many of which are owned by companies abroad. They've been paying massive bonuses. And they go, we have, massive dividends. We don't have the money to do all this infrastructure work. Really? My road is currently being dug up for I think the 5th time this year. It's a one-way street, so it's constantly closed. And it's been. And I actually said to the men, I went, "Oh, how long is it going to be closed for this time?" They said, "Just till Friday." I went, "Really? Until next time?" They went, "No, we found the leak now." And they were so happy about it. I was like, "Oh, well done." I walked away with a big smile on my face and went, "Really? Like, you finally found the leak?" The leak, by the way, that was caused when they were digging it up for 8 months to deal with some electricity supply thing. 8 months. I'm not joking. 8 months.
Did they say which Friday, though?
Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me. It would be so nice to drive down my street at some point. Let's get back to the shoplifting, though, because I've got a lot of calls already coming in on this. I thought I would have. I've got to be honest with you. It pays for. I've literally been walking past my local supermarket and a guy walking up with these massive big shoulders of lamb. And I'm literally like, "Oh, pay for those, did you? You know, you got a shoulders of lamb that probably cost like 30 quid, but you couldn't afford the £1 bag. Really?" And you just think, are you kidding me? And I looked at the security guard and he's just like, "I'm not allowed to stop them. There's nothing I can do. I need to stand by the booze, because the booze is the first thing that will go. And as soon as I move to any other place, they run in and they get the booze." Yep. I mean, that's where they're at. So short of having, men standing literally on the doors will shop, security people constantly, but they're not allowed to tackle. But we're watching it, and the thing is, it's like, I was just getting the tube the other day, and I'm walking out the tube, and this guy just slipped in behind me and went through the tube barrier without paying. And I'm like, "Oh, so I'll pay for your ticket then." And people think it's a victimless crime, like shoplifting. They think it's not. The shop's losing money, the shareholders. You may have your pension shares in some of these big supermarkets. It's the local small shopkeepers. They go out of business. Literally, shops in my high street have gone out of business because the shoplifting has just wiped everything out for them. And the stress levels, they're intimidated, they're scared. These people get violent. But also, the prices we pay for everything covers the cost of the stuff that's stolen. So they're stealing from us.
Oh, 100%, and it's organised crime that's doing it.
People think, they're desperate mothers looking for desperately stealing nappies. They're not.
They're not. Less than 3% of the shoplifting are those that would fall into a category or use a defence of "I'm desperate." The majority of it is organised crime that's going around, and they're targeting the different shops. There was one store chain that's now gone out of business, Wilko's. Their CEO at the time refused to allow the security staff, of which there were very few around, but the shop workers, to refer to shoplifters as shoplifters. They had to refer to them as non-paying customers, because she was a human rights lawyer.
Excuse me, I'm just going to quietly explode in the corner.
Yeah, she a
friend of mine works at the benefit office, and they're told to refer to the people getting benefits as clients or customers. I'm like, they're not customers. They're not paying for anything.
Exactly. And this is the problem, and you get and you find that as the big retail stores can afford security, not all of them do it, then it pushes it onto the smaller stores.
But even my local big well-known chain supermarket, they can afford security, but they're not allowed to do anything. And these people, and also there's no point anyway, because the police aren't going to do anything.
I know of a shop manager who was disciplined and threatened to be sacked because he chased a shoplifter out of his store.
I want to know the legals on me chasing. Because it angers me so much, because it's so basic, and they all steal. When I pay whatever extra pence for any item I'm paying for, that person has stolen that money from me by stealing.
Exactly, and the private sector is now coming in with solutions for shops. There's a couple of organisations out there that I know very well indeed, because I write quite a lot about crime and various other things for some security magazines, and initiatives getting pictures of shoplifters and putting them up on Facebook pages. Others getting the equivalent of a WhatsApp group and sharing it around different stores.
But they shouldn't have to do that. There should be a simple process. It's very simple. You steal from the store, we will tackle you down, we will pin you to the ground, you will be prosecuted, and the police will turn up. I don't understand why it's complicated. I doubt very much there's anyone who disagrees with me. I want to hear from you on this one. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. 10:22 is the time. There is so much more I want to talk about, including, of course, those hostage releases. Still ongoing. Hamas releasing more hostages in Gaza. The fifth female soldier, Israeli soldier, she has been released earlier today. Total of 3 Israelis, 5 Thai farm workers also taken hostage. No one ever talks about these people.
Exactly.
Just caught up in this, finally being released today as well. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. Get your calls in 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
length runway in Britain was built in the 1940s. No progress in 80 years. A third runway could increase potential GDP by 0.43% by 2050.
Could a new runway be built that abides with carbon targets, concerns around noise pollution and concerns around air pollution?
That a third runway at Heathrow would unlock further growth, boost investment, increase exports and make the UK more open and more connected.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you so much for joining me. Philip Ingram is also still with me. Let's go straight to your calls, coming in thick and fast about shoplifting. And they, according to retail bosses, they are brazenly stealing and attacking shop workers. They are now out of control because they fear no consequences. Latest stats just out just under an hour ago. Official criminal stats for England and Wales show shoplifting offences rose by 23% to 492,914 offence compared with the previous year. Now, I'm sorry, that's not a drop in the ocean. Most of the local retailers from my local high street, they said they don't even bother reporting them because they know the police aren't going to turn up and they know that they're never going to be prosecuted. Well, let's get to the phone lines. 0344 499 1000. What would you do to tackle this? Dan is in Colchester. Good morning to you, Dan.
Yeah, good morning, Julia.
Good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Now, a little birdie's told me you are actually the General Secretary of the Security Industry Federation. So you represent the security guards, the poor sods, frankly, who were trying to deal with this, but with not getting any backup from the law, from the courts. What do we need to do to tackle this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a perfect storm at the moment because, as you can see, the pictures that you've been showing, the purge that's underway at the shops, and our security guards are being told not to get involved. They've got to stand there, they've got to watch, they're being ridiculed, they're being photographed and videoed and put on YouTube for laughs and likes, and they want to be involved, but every day we are getting people contact us to say they're being disciplined for doing it.
But that's the thing, and I've spoken to security staff at high street stores and supermarkets near me, and they all say we are not allowed to tackle. I'm like, why do you tackle? He's running out. I mean, you can see him. I'm not allowed to tackle that person. I'm not allowed to touch that person. I'll be prosecuted for assault. I won't be backed up. If I get attacked, they're not going to pay my sick pay. I'm going to be disciplined. It's not worth my while. That must be the most frustrating job in the world.
It is, and me and my team, we are every day battling with security companies and the retailers, the clients, that are trying to put these ridiculous policies in place. We're trying to client removal so that if a security guard does actually try and do their job, they'll just remove them and say they don't want them anymore, and they'll get someone else in that's going to stand there like a cardboard cutout.
But that's literally what they end up doing. But the thing is, I mean, there is a risk. I mean, a lot of these people, it's organised criminals, you know. I've spoken to a local, well-known chain, and I've mentioned this on air before. I said, well, why don't you do anything about it? And the manager said, look, we tried locking the doors, we tried apprehending them, they get violent, they turn over the shop, they just trash the whole place, they attack the staff. So we tried locking the doors, they trash the stuff. They have no choice but to let them go. They said the police don't turn up, nothing's done. And everyone says, oh, well, if you only could identify these people. They've got their names and numbers. They even often have their ID. They've got video footage of them doing it, and the police do nothing. Now, we're told in recent months there is going to be a crackdown and that police are taking this more seriously. There's been pressure on politicians to get the police to take this more seriously. Has anything changed?
No, look, I mean, where I live in Essex, they're now getting rid of all the police community support officers, which were the ones that were turning up at locations. So now that we're getting rid of them, who is going to turn up? Because we know our police are understaffed, and the same as our security in this country. They're on minimum wage. They're standing there for £11 something an hour, and at the end of the day, they want to get their job. They want to do the job they've been paid for, they're being trained for, but they're going to be assaulted. Yeah. They're not going to be backed up. They're not going to get a justice in the courts, unfortunately.
And they're going to lose their job. No, exactly. I've got every sympathy for them. But it is so brazen, isn't it? It's so brazen. I genuinely was in a store the other week, and I actually said to the guy on the till, that guy, what's he doing? And he said, he's literally videoing what they want to take and taking orders. It's organised. It's not desperate mums trying to feed their babies, is it?
No, that's a complete myth. It's not at all. It is organised crime. People know they can get away with it, and the more that they see in the newspapers and the more they see on the news that people are going in and clearing the shelves and getting away with it, the more they don't want to do it.
So what is the answer? Because, it'd be great if we had, security staff who were tackling these people, but again, I fear for their safety on that. But there'll be lots of stores that can't afford that. You run a little local store. You're not going to afford a security staff who's trained. What is the answer?
But let's give the power back to the security guards. When the security guards are present in these stores, let's give them the ability to actually go and confront these people whilst they're clearing the shelves and tell them to put it back. Maybe.
I'd want a bit more than that, personally.
Oh, of course. But
I'm old school.
Let's start from the beginning and actually let's start confronting these people and telling them that this is not on. They can't do it. And the more they get challenged, the more they are going to think twice about returning back to that store. At the moment, if they're unchallenged, they're going to come in every day and do the same thing.
Yeah, and that is what's happening. Dan, listen, I hope keep your number, because I'd love to talk to you about it. If this does change in the future, really, really, really appreciate your call. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Tarquin, who is in London. Hi, Tarquin.
Happy New Year, Julia.
Happy New Year? What is it? It's almost February, mate.
You don't know how old I am.
Happy Halloween. I don't know.
Happy Halloween.
We're almost there. Tarquin, what do you want to say about this?
Is Philip there still with you?
I'm still here, Tarquin.
He's been very well behaved and quiet in the corner.
Happy New Year, sir.
Happy New Year to you,
Can you get on with it? I've got a guest waiting.
Yeah. Right. This is my point, Julia, Philip. Dan, it's like lovely, fluffy things that Dan said, and I appreciate everything he does.
It wasn't being fluffy. He was...
Well, in the sense that what we're talking about here is we're talking about symptoms. It's what we're symptomatic is not going to solve the problem. What we need to do is drain all the police forces of their Twitter Stasi mobs, get them back on the streets where they were. And when Robert Peel thought of this whole thing in the first place in the 1840s, he didn't think of Stasi. He was thinking about keeping the peace.
Yeah. So basically, a shopkeeper can run into the street and go, "That guy's just stolen from me," and miraculously, there's a police officer walking down the street.
With respect, the police, other than citizens' arrest, they do have the power of arrest, and they will get the state to back them up. Unlike, Freddie down on the corner shop with his lovely little high-vis and his SIA badge, he's not going to get backed up.
That's my thing. I want, whether security guards or shop workers, I want as a customer to have that right. I'm not sure I'd be that much use pinning someone down, but, I'd love to give it a go. We're going to have to leave it there, Todd. We've had too many Happy New Years. Thank you very much, Dee, for your call. 10:33, very quick reaction from Philip to that.
Well, it is. It's been proactive and bringing that in. And that proactivity, it's bringing technology and new ideas in to support the police to get quicker prosecutions as well, because it's great confronting at one stage, but you have to have longer-term implications.
Yeah, but also, you don't just get a slap on the wrist and a fine that's lower than the value of the goods that you've stolen. You need to go to prison. Exactly. You've done it more than once, you're in prison. End of. Pay. I'm happy to pay more taxes to pay for prisons for those people, so I can walk around my local supermarket not worried about someone barging past as they're stealing off the store. 10:33 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, got Ian Duncan Smith to talk to you. He's coming up, and we're also going to be talking about what is going on later about that awful crash in Washington, D.C., that plane crash. It cost, we think now, more than 60 lives. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer, also still with me, interested in his thoughts on what my next guest has to say. Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, Conservative MP, former leader of the Conservative Party, joins us right now. Good morning to you, Sir Ian.
Hello, Julia.
Good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's talk about growth. Let's talk about Rachel Reeves. Apparently, according to Michael O'Leary, knows quite a lot about growth, having grown one of the biggest airlines in Europe, in Ryanair, in recent years. We love to hate him, but we all get his flights. But he says she hasn't got a clue about growth, and this plan for a third runway at Heathrow is being talked about since before I was born. And he says it's not going to happen for 40 or 50 years. It isn't going to deliver growth. Is she right or is he right?
Well, he's certainly partly right over this, which is the time it'll take to construct this the runway. It should have been built years ago. There was a big mistake going right back to Blair, then Cameron, and so it went on. Everybody putting it off, not making a decision. I've always believed that you should have had a second runway at Gatwick anyway, years and years ago, because it's ludicrous now, the amount of traffic they have. I think extra runways in that area will actually increase growth in due course.
But you need them actually to be built.
It's got to be there, and aircraft got to be landing. So he's right in that regard. About not having a clue, I agree with him there, because I think the biggest problem she's got is now we face this nightmare where she didn't seem to understand that if she taxes more, borrows more, and spends more on public servants, in other words, these huge wage settlements that they've had, which is, by the way, going to push the cost of the NHS up, and then adding the cost of that through national insurance charges, she has gone in the exact opposite direction, because what she's going to do is depress the economy, which is what's happening. So she doesn't seem to figure out that it was her budget that accelerated the lack of interest in the UK from foreign investors. And then attacking all those who have money, the non-doms, has been the biggest mistake we've ever made.
Well, quite apart from ordinary wealth creators, whether they run a local corner shop or whether they have hundreds of thousands of employees in this country, basically saying we can't afford to take anyone on because of the cost of the national insurance hike and the lowering the threshold and the minimum wage. We simply can't expand. We don't have the spare money. We're having to pay extra money in taxes that we can't spend, expanding our business. This is happening across the board. Is the answer, someone like Donald Trump coming along? Is the answer the Conservative Party, or is it someone like Donald Trump who can say, right, we're going to change everything. We're going to just throw everything up in the air and just turn it all on its head, and we're going to start again, which seems to be what he's trying to do in America.
Well, yes, and I wouldn't follow necessarily his way of doing things. What I do know is there's a very simple answer to lack of growth in the economy, and that is get the burdens down off businesses and off people, give them the incentive to work longer, and give businesses the incentive to hire more people. And by doing that, you have to reduce the burden of taxation on both. It's a very simple equation. The second thing that you have to do is you have to make sure you start investing in all the startup areas. So we should be releasing all that pensions money to be investing in startups. Companies that start in the UK, and we're brilliant at getting startup companies, after about 2.5 to 3 years, when they want to raise money to move to the next level, they go to America, because America is where all the money is. And for years I've been arguing. I wrote a report called the Tigger Report, which we talked about this. It said release all that money tied up under too much regulation, allow it to invest in British startups, and you'll see a huge increase in growth. All of this can be done very simply. You don't have to be Donald Trump. You just have to be sensible and a Conservative to understand that growth comes from business. And if you stifle business, you don't get growth.
Well, one of the things we have seen over recent years, we haven't seen growth, but we have seen, in terms of wealth, we have seen massive growth there in the number of people on the public payroll, not just public sector workers, often achieving very little, very low productivity, but also the number of people who are receiving benefits. Now, Gordon Brown, I think when he was Chancellor under Labour, basically made it a deliberate policy to put everyone on the payroll with working tax credits and the like. It's absolutely massively accelerated under the Conservative government, though. You, of course, were former Work and Pensions Secretary, and you did actually get, statistics are clear, you got more families, workless families, back to work. But there are now huge number of people now claiming sickness benefits. The crackdown, we're told, that is going to apparently be coming, isn't going to happen until not coming until 24 later this year. But basically, we are looking. There are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people who have never been asked to, even had a meeting face to face, who are claiming thousands upon thousands of pounds in sickness benefits, have no requirement to look for work, no checks are made once they signed on to these benefits, and they are claiming a hell of a lot of money from taxpayers who are going out to work every day. What can be done about that?
Well, when I was there, I'll be honest with you, we had the lowest number of workless households since records began. And that's because we said work is what people should be doing, unless there's a very, very serious reason why not. Even people who have some illness or sickness should be working. Working is a health treatment. If you have mental health, conditions like anxiety or depression, work is the best medicine you can take because it gets you out of your sort of black tunnel of despair and gets you meeting people. So not just for the paycheck, but for self-respect. And when I was there, we were able, as a result of that, to take some 32 billion a year out of the welfare budget. Now, that was a lot of money, but it was also getting more people back to work. COVID hit, and this is where politicians and civil servants, I think, lost their heads. They literally kind of had everybody stayed at home, paid to do nothing. Places like Sweden didn't do this. And this stupid inquiry we've got going at the moment will never get to the bottom of what we did wrong because it's so interested only in little tittle-tattle and nonsense like that. The truth is, we made a mistake. The mistake was to just let people sit at home. Sitting at home does two things. First of all, get in the habit of it. Secondly, it's bad for your mental health. You need to be meeting people, seeing people. So there is a way around it. I'm very happy to help the government try and get this right, because what we have to do is not a crackdown, it's making sure that those on sickness benefit who try and defraud the system by working, we should want them to work, but we want them to declare it, and we should strip it off them bit by bit through universal credit. It's all very straightforward.
But there's also, I'm sorry, and I think everybody will know somebody who's doing this. There are also people, we've got 2.5 million people, 2.4 million people receiving sick benefits without the need to seek any work at all. We are, the number of people, the percentage of our population, particularly younger people, under 40s, claiming these sort of benefits, compared with any other comparable European nation, is off the scale. These people are clearly swinging the lead, unless we had some uniquely different health problems in this country. I mean, a lot of what we know is it's stress, it's mental health, it's stuff. And I'm sorry, it's just not going to fly anymore. Everyone I know knows someone who's claiming some sort of benefits like this, who is swinging the lead. Now, as far as I'm concerned, they're stealing from other taxpayers. Anyone getting up for work at 6 in the morning, they're having money stolen from their pocket, stolen from their children's future by people who are not working. And everyone needs to stop being so namby-pamby about it. Literally, bring everyone into a town hall. Right, what you're claiming, right, why do you need to claim this? Why can't you work? And I'd like the public to be able to go, yeah, we're not convinced, actually. I really think we're getting to that level of territory. We cannot afford to have millions of people swinging the lead, being paid for.
But Julia, it is possible to resolve this. I've been banging on about it for some time. Sickness benefit was never in universal credit. I argued for it to be in universal credit, because in universal credit, you are seen regularly by work coaches. And now it's coming in at last, but it's taken years to get it in. And George Osborne and others should have done it. Now it's coming in. Now they get seen regularly. Now they get asked, let's find you a job. Let's get you back into work. There's lots you can do once you've got them in. This will cut it dramatically, and it will change the pattern. Well, but you're right.
We'll wait and see.
People claiming sickness benefit should be working.
Can I also ask you just finally about a story which reveals that we're paying taxpayers £3,000 a day. OK, a drop in the ocean compared to all the other massive expenses of paying for all the other things we pay for. But for channel migrants, to buy them new clothes and shoes when they arrive here, £3,000 a day. We're told that £3 million cost over the last recent years is good value for money.
I, by the way, misread your message to me to say you were going to discuss this. When you wrote Channel, I thought, oh, Chanel. And I thought what we were giving them was Chanel clothes.
That was a message from my producers, testing the topics we might cover, yeah.
The whole thing is ridiculous. That's why this business of getting them off, those who come illegally need to be got off straight away to a third place, and there you sort their inquiry. And it's such that it will absolutely say to people, it's not worth coming here, because by the time you spent your hard-earned money, you're going to be in a country further away from the UK than here. And we should have said to the convention, we're not going to obey any rule that says to us that we cannot deal with illegal migrants ourselves. And we should do that now. And by the way, the government is going to end up in a whole lot of pain because their present game is not going to work. What they should have done is got behind that idea of Rwanda and get it done, but on a big scale. Look at what Trump's doing right now. Trump is putting them on the aircraft and shipping them out.
Absolutely.
Exactly what we've got to do.
Rwanda was never going to work on the scale it was on at that time. But yeah, in principle, absolutely support it. Sir Duncan Smith, there are about 20 other things I want to talk to you about, but time is against us. Former leader of the Conservative Party, Sir Duncan Smith, thank you. Philip Ingram, your response to whichever story you want to come in on.
Well, I think there's two bits in there that are very encouraging, and I wish the government was grown up to take up on it. Him talking about offering to help the government in dealing with understanding that how you get benefit change and all the rest of it. This should be a cross-party issue. It's been going on for so long. Approach it from an apolitical view, but the current government won't do that, and therefore nothing's going to change.
This has become political, but it's not political for most people.
Exactly.
Even Labour voters think they won't crack down. By the way, also poorer people on the lowest incomes, they're the people who most want they're the ones who most want the crackdowns because they're the ones who live next door to the people who they see not getting up in the morning to go to work when they are. We're going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid. So sorry. 10:47 is the time. Up next, we are going to be talking about those hostage releases. Actually, no, apologies, we're not up next. That's a little bit later in the show. We are going to be talking about the latest on the Washington, D.C. plane crash with an aviation consultant and former British Airways pilot. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
The difference with reform, we identify the problem. Yes, it might sound tough, it might sound grim, but then we say, but this is how you solve it. And the way to solve the population crisis is to have net zero immigration and to learn lessons from the new president of the United States, President Trump. And he's going to show us the way over the next couple of years in a variety of different areas, whether it's immigration, whether it's regulation, whether it's scrapping net zero. They're going to be growing like gangbusters. We're all going to be jealous as we head south.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Well, we all woke up this morning to the absolutely tragic news coming out of Washington, D.C. about a plane crash involving some 60 people on a plane travelling into Washington, D.C.'s airport, colliding with a helicopter with 3 US soldiers on board. It is now believed that really it's going to be impossible that the 67 people in total actually involved in that collision will ever be found alive. That collision happened 9 o'clock Washington DC time last night. Very dark conditions, freezing cold river that the plane and the helicopter crashed into. A massive search and rescue mission was underway, some 300 responders, but really now very, very unlikely that anyone will be found alive. Let's talk about this with Alistair Rowson-Shine. He's a former British Airways pilot, now an aviation consultant. Good morning to you, Alistair.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. I mean, these crashes are, much rarer than people like to think. Whenever they happen, they are all over the news because people are, very concerned about these things, and people are often feeling, oh gosh, it could have been me. It seems like a horrific, awful accident that a helicopter collided with a passenger jet like this. How on earth, though, do these things happen?
Well, as you quite rightly say, they are awful. They're also very rare. There are many aircraft flying at the moment, more aircraft than have ever flown before. How did it happen? It's difficult. One would speculate on these things, but there is a helicopter route which flies up from the military airbase, which is south of the Washington airport. And that flight path is called Route 4, and it follows the eastern side of the Potomac River. And as the helicopters approach the airport, they have to descend down to 200 feet, and that would be the maximum altitude they can go at. Now, this particular airliner was flying into runway 01 at Washington Airport, and they moved it over to runway 33. So it will have then changed its flight path, would have moved further to the east and directly over the helicopter route. So had the helicopter been above 200 feet, then that would cause the collision. The airliner would not have been below its normal approach path.
The airliner, as far as we know, was doing exactly as it was instructed by air traffic control at Ronald Reagan Airport.
Absolutely. That is what we understand. And we've no reason to think it was doing otherwise. So the question here would be, why did it contact this helicopter? So the helicopter pilot was told by air traffic control that there was an aircraft, a conflict, and could it see it? And,
yes, there's actually an audio of that saying, can you see it? Can you see this jet?
Yes, now that's not an unusual call for air traffic controller to make. So the pilot in this case said that he could see it. He may well have identified the wrong aircraft. And that is so easily done, especially at night, over a town like this with plenty of lights everywhere. So you can misidentify.
But is that one of the issues then? Why would the air traffic control not say, you are in line to collide with this jet, please adjust your height to X or Y? Why would there not been an instruction to the helicopter rather than a can you see it, knowing what you've just told us, that there are lots of other planes in the sky, lots of lights and lots of confusion?
What follows on from a pilot identifying another aircraft is that they then are able to maneuver to avoid a contact with that aircraft. And so that's the whole point of asking whether or not a pilot has seen it. Now, as far as the airline pilots are concerned, they'd be flying their jet into the airport, focusing on the runway, and not expected to divert because of the helicopter. No. The helicopter would be expected to divert because of the airliner. Now, the fact is there is a helicopter route and it is right next to the airport. So there is a constant risk that this could happen. But if the helicopters are below the height instructed on that route, then there should never be a collision.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen there has been a plane that's ditched into Potomac River before. I think it was 2018, because we all remember that famous incident, the Hudson River in New York, where the pilot was able to magnificently, I mean, it became a hit, Hollywood movie, was able to land the plane and get everybody, I think everybody out alive, even despite, again, freezing conditions, people rushing to rescue. This scenario very different. It's at night, it's in the dark, it's in freezing cold January, temperatures in the water believed to be around 1 degree. Realistically, with a collision, and there is video footage appearing to show a collision and a fireball in the sky, realistically, would anybody even have survived the collision itself?
It would seem highly unlikely. I mean, certainly from the video, you can see that the aircraft plummets to the ground, hits the river within about 3 seconds of contact with a helicopter. The incident you referred to earlier with the Hudson River, and that was Captain Sully Sullenberger, was an military pilot. Now, in fact, he still had control of the aircraft, even though both engines had failed. But in this case, there is absolutely no control whatsoever. However, as we do mention aircraft going into rivers, in this case, there was in 1982 a Boeing 737-200 aircraft, it's a type model of aircraft I used to fly, which took off in icing conditions, and it flew straight into a bridge from runway 01. So it took off, flew into the bridge over the Potomac River and crashed there. And there were scenes of rescue attempts to get the passengers, those who survived, out of the water. Some of them perished because of the cold water, but there were survivors in that case. But all these accidents, they're completely different. There's no...
But that's it. The area of accident investigators, they arrive on the scene very, very quickly, don't they? There is this airline industry sort of goes together and desperately tries to, find out what went wrong. Donald Trump has, tweeted or put on through social, his concern. This looks like an accident that shouldn't have happened. Do you think, the awful phrase "lessons will be learned"? But I mean, the airline industry, they often are. Do you think that things will change as a result of this busy airport?
No, undoubtedly. We have very few accidents now compared with the number of aircraft that are flying, and more aircraft flying now than ever before. And the number of accidents are quite rare. Now, unfortunately, we have had, in the last 5 weeks, actually 4 aircraft accidents. This collision, then there was one shot down by the Russians, and then another one careered off the end of a runway in South Korea into an earth bank. They're all quite different, but this is an extremely rare set of events. In fact, recently we had 18 months where not a single airliner anywhere in the world that had an accident. When I first started flying as an airline pilot, it was pretty much one every week.
We always make a very big sort of a song and dance actually about every accident, even if there aren't any fatalities, as tragically there are, it appears in this case. But actually, it's all over the news. But as you say, they are few and far between. We'll have to leave it there. But I really appreciate your time. Great to get your expertise on aviation consultant, former BA pilot, Alistair Rowsonshine. I tell you what, Philip. I'd love to be in a plane that Alistair's flying. I'd feel very safe indeed.
Well, exactly. And all pilots are highly, highly trained.
Yeah,
and none could deal with a helicopter coming into the side of your aircraft.
It does sound like just an awful, tragic accident. But again, it does appear also there were children on board this plane. As we mentioned earlier, children going to an ice skating competition. So that at least 13 children on board. The 64 people believed to be on board, passengers and crew on that passenger jet that is down. Any more developments, we'll bring them to you here. Coming up, we're going to take more of your calls about shoplifting, about Heathrow's third runway and everything in between. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Thank you so much for joining me. Just coming up to 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. And whether you are listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, whether you're watching on YouTube or on your connected device, thank you so much for joining us. If you're just joining us, well, you want a good excuse about why you haven't been here since 10. But we are all the way till 1 o'clock, of course, when Ian Collins will take over. Lots to talk about in this hour. We're talking about the Prime Minister facing a bitter rift in the Labour Party after the Chancellor Rachel Reeves, in her big announcement yesterday about boosting growth in the country, announced the government is going to back, as many had expected, a third runway at Heathrow as part of her growth strategy. The London Mayor Sadiq Khan has said he will fight against the plan, and Ryanair boss Michael O'Leary says the runway won't even be ready before 2050 and says that the Chancellor hasn't got a clue how to boost growth. I think he may be right about this. Also, the taxpayer is spending a whopping £3,000 every single day on providing new clothes and shoes for illegal Channel migrants. When they arrived, apparently they need new clothes and shoes. Some are also offered free mobile phones. Can't remember the last time I got a free mobile phone from the government. Do you not all get one every year? I assume we all did. Oh, sorry. No, is it just me then? I'm just wondering. But anyway, the Home Office says, I said it was 3 million the other day. It's 4 million quid over 3 years. They say that's justified money. I mean, that's just on top of, paying their room and board and hotel accommodation and everything else. Oh, yeah, and the legal fees. Yeah, I mean, everything. Oh, the flights home if we ever get rid of them. I mean, anything else you want us to pay for? I mean, why don't we just empty our bank accounts and give them to them now? We're also going to be talking more about shoplifters who brazenly steal and violently attack shop workers. They are, according to retail bosses, now out of control because they do not fear any consequences. Why don't they fear it? Because there aren't any consequences. Retail bosses are demanding urgent action to tackle lawlessness. I think pretty much all of us would agree with them on that. So the question today is all about, again, you can talk to us about any of the topics we're talking about today, but I do particularly want to know how you would tackle the problem of shoplifting. Latest crime stats for England and Wales show this morning that we have seen a big increase in shoplifting offences. That's just the ones that are reported. I mean, very few of them are actually prosecuted. A lot of it now is just organised crime. They steal to order. They know they're not going to ever be arrested or charged or face any time behind bars. Shoplifters are brazenly stealing and attacking shop workers. How do we deal with these out-of-control thieves? What would you do? Tell us what you think. 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls, of course, are altogether now charged at the national rate. Text cost one, standard network rate. Message. I have to say that bit. I also have to say this bit. Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer, is joining us today. Very good morning to you.
Good morning again.
I think if you're not watching on the YouTube. Was it whatever my husband would what would my 82-year-old father call it? The YouTube. Philip Ingram is in a very natty. What colour would you call that?
Colourful, pinky. It's sort of pinky, burgundy.
Pinky burgundy. I don't know. Pinky burgundy. Call in. Do let us know. We think a very fetching spring-like appearance. Very
It's a beautiful day in London.
Very.
I'm trying to give Michael Portillo a run for his money.
You absolutely are there. You absolutely are. Don't get any trains. Whatever you do, he'll talk to you. I just want to get your thoughts quickly on the shoplifting, because we have been talking about that, and it's really interesting that one of our first calls was actually a man who represents the trade union for the shop security guards. This is Dan Garnham. They are so frustrated, these security staff, and I've spoken to shopkeepers, shop staff and security guards repeatedly in my local high street. They are just so frustrated that they are not getting the backup from the police, from the courts. They can't tackle anybody. They can't do anything about it.
Yeah, it's the security guards that are metaphorical handcuffs when it should be the shoplifters that are in actual handcuffs.
Yeah.
And nobody's doing it. And I'm sort of slightly right of Genghis Khan when it comes to dealing with these individuals, so I can't say what I would do with them.
Oh no, I can say what I would do, and it's definitely illegal.
Yes, well, yeah, and that's the only way to stop it. There needs to be some form of deterrence.
Do you know what? If every time you went into a store, something like, which we all know what we're talking about, happened, I think you might stop it. Only trouble is, then there'd be stores, they'd go to the next store, they'd go to the places that weren't doing it.
Yeah.
This is why it does need to be a community, it needs to be a police action, it needs to be firm, it needs to be zero tolerance. I don't care if you're stealing a packet of crisps or whether you are stealing, the entire, collection of steaks or bottles of vodka in Tesco.
Yeah. And so many things go back to the same thing. We need to get community policing back again. And the government cuts that have been imposed on the police by increasing national insurance charges and all the rest of it, in Essex, as Dan said, have resulted in the PCSOs being cut.
Yeah, absolutely. But we also need, I think community, I think individuals, I think people just sort of, there's a lot of shrugging.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of shrugging about people who just don't pay their way, who as it, What why are we accepting this? Yeah. When you go into the store, when you buy your milk and your loaf of bread in your local store, and someone else is stealing bottles of whiskey and vodka or anything, or even just their milk and their bread, you're paying more for it. They're stealing from the store and they're stealing from you. They're stealing from you. I don't understand why people aren't more angry about it. And perhaps if these people thought they'd have a lot of angry customers confronting them, tripping them up on the way out the store and bundling on them, I think in a citizen's arrest legal sort of way, obviously if the police are watching, I think perhaps they might feel differently.
Well, but a lot of these individuals come in and one of the things they'll do is go to DIY sections there, they'll pick up a hammer and they'll wander around with a hammer in their hand. They've got knives in their pocket, they've got syringes with needles in them.
You have to assume these people are dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. I know shop staff who have been confronting individuals and the individual has turned around and threatened them with a syringe. Yeah. And what do you do then?
Yeah, exactly. You back off. And they know that, which is what we... God... It's almost like there was a reason why we decided to have this thing called the police, isn't it? I wonder what happened to them.
And police should be given truncheons and batons and should be allowed to use them.
Oh, well, they have got batons, but I'd like
they
more
should be allowed to use them.
I think most police officers would love to take action.
Yeah.
I think they would. I think, again, let's just give the benefit of the doubt. If you're security and someone gets hurt while you're trying to stop someone, and I don't care if they're stealing something worth 5p or £5,000, I think the benefit of the doubt should be given to you, unless you're literally standing there beating somebody. Yeah. When they're already on the ground. I'm thinking, but again, if you're on a minimum wage job, would you really take that risk? I wonder. I mean, the answer, I think, is clear no. I want to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Let's also talk more about Heathrow and not getting a new runway before 2050, which is, the very, very clear statement from one Michael O'Leary, him of Ryanair. He said about Rachel Reeves and her speech yesterday, the big news really was this government is going to back the third runway. Ed Miliband, the Energy Secretary, curiously absent, talked about it at PMQs. Keir Starmer, now massively in favour of this third runway at Heathrow, voted against it only a few years ago, quite happily, and said, climate, the threat of climate change was far more important. There is no clean option for the airline fuel at the moment. Less than like 0.4% or something. I think it's even lower than that. Planes in the world operate on some sort of clean version of energy. I don't know, your vegetable oil left over after you fried something. It's not happening. It's not clean. Aviation fuel, like all fuel, will get cleaner. I'm sure it will. Planes are going to get quieter. I'm sure they will. At the end of the day, if you want people to be able to fly in and out, whether it's on holiday or whether it's for business, whether it's cargo going in and out, particularly our exports from brilliant industries that we have in Britain still, you're going to have hub airports. You need to have a lot of runways. You need to have big hub airports that have lots of flights that come in where people change and then you get onto another flight. You need to have that because that's what other countries are doing and it's how you boost your economy. 100% I'm behind Heathrow. I will probably hear some of the planes. I will get over it because our economy needs that boost. Here's the thing though. It's not going to happen before I retire. It's probably not going to happen before I die. We don't build anything here anyway. When Michael O'Leary says, this is what he said, there she is trying to distract everybody with a press conference, wittering on about starting a consultation on the mythical dead cat known as the third runway at Heathrow. Please understand, he says, this won't come until 2040 or 2050 at the earliest. This won't deliver growth, not this year, not in the life of the current government, and not even in the life of the next government. He called her Rachel rubbish and said she hasn't got a clue. He says actually cutting passenger duty would be the key thing. You could cut like 60 quid off a holiday. Other countries are doing it, so people are choosing those countries. I think he's probably right about this. But But what is the answer?
Yeah, well, there's so many things wrong. Rachel Reeves voted against it. She voted against an expansion of Leeds Bradford airfield, saying, "Oh, people don't travel during COVID." Well,
yeah. We're going to live. No, but you've got to remember, under Labour, we would still be living in lockdown. They never wanted us to come out of it.
And again, if you listen to her statements, it's all jammed tomorrow. Nothing is going to affect today, and it's jammed tomorrow in the next or the next or the next Parliament. So she's not going to have to deal with it. So she's proving to all those that hate everyone calling her Rachel from accounts. She's proving that she's Rachel from accounts. She knows nothing about economics. And she's trying to bring economic policies in where she's just randomly inventing things that are good sound bites to put out to get the Labour supporters saying they're doing something. And I saw the cut and paste from every Labour MP yesterday on their texts, their Twitter feeds going out, and cutting and pasting exactly the same thing to put out to try and support her statement.
But
they can't even think independently themselves.
But genuinely, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, they were all opposed to this. It is, I mean, and there's nothing that's changed economically at all. It is bizarre. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this if you want to get in touch. With lots of calls, of course, on the growth strategy yesterday. 0344 499 1000. Do get in touch. Let's also talk about hostages because today we are seeing 3 more Israeli hostages returned, 5 Thai farm workers. Everyone's forgotten about all of those people in return for hundreds, as always, of Palestinian prisoners, convicted, many of them, of serious violent crimes, including terrorism, mass murder, being released in return. First release this morning was the final of one of the 5 female soldiers who were taken captive. Once again, put in a uniform. Once again, even though this is Agam Berger, put a uniform, even though I like the girls at on Saturday. She was actually
kidnapped in her pyjamas.
Kidnapped in her pyjamas, along with a bunch of other teenage girls as well. Also, Gadi Moses, also a male hostage. He's been freed. We actually spoke to his niece on last 7th of October on the first anniversary of that attack. We've spoken to many relatives of those released. Those, as the hostages that have been released, each time now we've seen big sort of fanfare from Hamas, a different sort of setup each time. The Red Cross arrived, the places agreed, and then they have huge numbers of Hamas fighters in their uniforms, which they've miraculously discovered. They've all been kept very clean in the cupboard the whole time they were hiding behind civilians.
Well, that's because they were wearing journalist uniforms or doctors' uniforms or nurses' uniforms.
Huge number of people, filming perfectly safely. Apparently it's totally safe for them now to film. Lots of weaponry, balaclavas, terrifying the living daylights out. I mean, this woman, she was on her own. At least the other 4, when they released last week, they actually were able to be together. But she'd been separated from them some days ago. Looking absolutely terrified, paraded again, Hunger Games style. It is just extraordinary what they're doing here. I'm amazed. The Amazon deliveries of Palestinian flags seem to be very reliable in Gaza, even if food supplies aren't.
Well, and printing unique banners with slogans on it supporting what's going on.
It's amazing how that economy is working.
They're making a mockery of all of the claims that they've put out to say how much damage has been, how the infrastructure has been completely destroyed. They've been able to build this out of without any problems whatsoever, and therefore it's highlighting the fact that the majority of what has come out beforehand has been complete disinformation, and people have fallen for it.
Well, no, importantly, journalists have fallen for it who should know better, and they're constantly hearing the BBC all the time. Of course, we've not been allowed into Gaza, but because the Israeli government wouldn't allow us in. No, because you'd have been taken hostage. By the way, are you crazy? Then they've got yet another problem. But also extraordinary, they still then use all the footage they get, even though they don't say this has only been able to be given to us because Hamas have approved it, because nothing comes out of Gaza unless Hamas has approved it. But they never give that certificate. Now, just to confirm, all 3 Israeli hostages are now out of Gaza, and they are now safely with the IDF, going to be obviously getting hospital treatment. First of all, they get checks initially. I was wondering, actually, if one of the checks that happens, and we've all watched Fauda and see what happens, is whether they're checking, like whether they've been booby-trapped. And we've seen a case where, someone has been released and a bomb has been put in them. I mean, I wouldn't put anything past Hamas. They are savages. But they check, whether they change their clothes, they're washed often. They need to check that they are safe before they see their families. But we've seen these incredible reunions for the families. as a mum of I've got an 18-year-old, these are 19-year-old, 20-year-old girls. These, I mean, I know they're women, but they look like little girls to me. I can't imagine what these families have gone through, and I have wept every time I've watched this footage. And it just, because this is a choice. I mean, when we've seen these horrific images of children who have been killed or maimed in Gaza as a result of Israeli weapons, and there's a whole thing going on social media. Oh, you said you didn't weep a single tear of them. That's not a deliberate. That's not a deliberate attack. That is a country defending themselves. The only reason those children never got harmed was because Hamas put them in harm's way and started that war. Yeah. But when the deliberate taking of hostages, and we know a lot of detail is coming out about how these women were kept, and we know a lot of the other hostages kept in tunnels for 8 months in the dark. We know they've been tortured. We suspect, and we know in the case of some, it is very, very likely, given what happened on October the 7th, that many of these hostages, men and women included, have been raped repeatedly. We know that this is what Hamas does. Yes. They regard these women particularly as sex slaves.
Yes. And they regard them as inhuman, and they use them as their abuse things, their playthings. Now, the Israeli government, rightly so, to protect them, to protect the other hostages that are there, are keeping as much of the detail away as possible. And the individuals don't want the detail plastered.
No, they have a right to. Yes, and again, I'm not. But we know from a lot of the interviews with people who released much earlier.
Exactly, and the International Committee of the Red Cross, who are now facilitating this, they weren't given opportunity to go and check the hostages beforehand, as international law requires, if they were being treated as prisoners.
I don't remember anyone criticising Hamas for that. That's weird.
No, like all of the different agencies operating inside Gaza, they are populated by Hamas, and that's the difficulty. That's the big issue there is with UNRWA. The individuals have been through a horrific 480 odd days.
But what I find incredible is how often when you're watching these things and you've got the BBC's going to they're on rolling coverage, and they'll say, well, they certainly appear healthy and well. I mean, we've heard from some of the hostages, they're starved for months on end, and then they will be given food and sort of fattened up. For release,
and I've read reports they've been given drugs as well to perk them up, and so that they're compliant as they're taken forward. They're paraded. It's Hamas trying to stick metaphorically two fingers up at the Israelis, saying, we're still here, you haven't damaged us, look at what we're doing, and we're taking the limelight.
The 4 female soldiers who came out last weekend, I loved their defiance when they were paraded. I mean, they went to a baying mob of thousands of Palestinian men in Gaza, and with men with guns and balaclavas, and they held up their fists, and they've said, because we were like, were they told to do that? Why are they forced to do that? And they apparently told their families, no, we agreed, we weren't going to show fear. God, I love these women for this, I really do. 11:19 is the time. We're going to take a break, and we're going to get to more of your calls. As you say, always welcome to call in on anything we're talking about, 0344 499 1000. But in particular, I want to hear from you about shoplifting, as retail bosses say shoplifters who brazenly steal and attack shop workers are out of control. They fear no consequences because there are no consequences. I want to know, what's the solution? What would you do to tackle it? Give us a call. This is Talk.
the whole speech seems to be a complete acceptance that they've got it wrong so far, and all that doom and gloom we heard from July, August, September, all those emergency press conferences and speeches and clips to cameras basically saying the country's going down the Swanee, and now we've got this new Chancellor, you know, it's like, who's the new girl? Like,
That's right.
Like, everything's great, Britain's brilliant, we can do this, we can do that, we can do that, which I think is a sort of tacit acceptance, or not even that tacit, a pretty clear acceptance that, you know, they've almost talked the country into a recession.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. 11:24. We're just coming up to. Philip Ingram's also with me. Let's get to your calls coming in thick and fast about shoplifting. I know there's lots going on in the world, big picture stuff, but you know what? The day-to-day stuff of our daily lives and the lawlessness on our streets, I think is kind of breaking a lot of people's souls. It certainly is mine. And when you see people who just don't pay their way, shoplifting to order, it's organised crime now. This is not mums desperately stealing baby formula, guys. That is not what is going on. No wonder that retail bosses say it's out of control. These people fear no consequences. Their shop workers are being attacked, and it needs to stop. I want to know what you would do about it. Well, let's go to James. He's in Staffordshire. Hello, James.
Good morning, Julia.
Good morning. What's your solution?
I can make two very quick points. The first point for the solution and for shoplifting is the same for knife crime. The consequence has got to beat the offence, and that is Singapore-style corporal punishment. Do you know what? I'm heading that way. I've got to be honest with you. I've been to Singapore. Oh, it's a lovely place. I tell you what, there's no chewing gum or litter on the streets. You know why? Yeah, you get flogged if you do it. Yeah, they left a wallet out as an experiment on a public bench. It was there 2 hours later. That tells you everything, doesn't it? I mean, yeah. But this is the thing. It needs to be, because people. This is the key thing. The retail bosses say, like, it's out of control and you know, it's violent now. And they fear no consequences because there are no consequences. No, I mean, for instance, with knife crime, and if you're caught carrying a knife, you get 5 lashes the first time, 10 lashes the second time, 20 lashes the third time. Pain is an excellent teacher. I think public shame as well. I don't think there's any shame anymore in a lot of these crimes. Now, the second point I'd like to make is over racial reasons, the economy, immigration, this, that, and the other. Unfortunately, and I'm now a Reform voter, but nobody will be able to do anything because the civil service won't let them do it. Yeah. You know, Suella Braverman tried to stop the boats. Priti Patel tried to stop the boats. We really do need a Trump-style, come into work Monday morning, do your job, or we consider it your resignation. I mean, he literally issued that sort of proclamation style. It was like King Decree style thing yesterday, wasn't it? And I looked at it on social media. I'm like, yeah, let's have a bit of that here. And it is amazing. You've got governments saying they want to get to grips with, you know, channel migrants or benefit scroungers or criminals or whatever it is. They can't even get their own employees to turn up and sit behind a desk. Why on earth do we think they're going to get anything done? Absolutely. I mean, but the thing is, can you think of the impact that would happen on the production of hobnobs and daytime TV viewing figures and I mean, somebody's got to walk the dog. I mean, absolutely. What I'm amazed by is how again, talk about that word brazen used by retail bosses. People are brazen about it. They kind of brag about it, about how, you know, they're working from the beach or they're not really working or they're doing stuff. You know, I'm on a Zoom call, but, you know, I haven't got the camera on because I'm on the beach. I mean, it is so brazen now. There is no shame. No, I mean, they've threatened to go on strike if they're asked to come back into the office 3 days. All right then, bye. But getting back to the shoplifting, as I said, you know, I feel massively sorry for the poor security guards and that.
There was a guy, I'll just mention this, there was a guy had a £98,000 Range Rover stolen off his drive.
Yeah.
The police gave him a crime number.
Yeah.
They've stolen £98,000.
Yeah.
I'm ex-police, I did 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it breaks my heart to see that the long march through the universities has produced this. It's just Marxism now. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I think so many share your frustration, James. Thank you very much. Yep. What do you reckon, Philip Ingram? Public floggings for some of these crimes?
Oh, I think we need to get into that game.
No, the terrible thing, honestly, if you'd asked me that question 20, 30 years ago, I'd have gone, are you insane? Now I'm like, yeah, sounds like it'll work.
Yeah, there needs to be something to act as a deterrent, and there isn't with the current court system. There isn't with the current punishments that come out.
And it'd be cheap.
It'd be a lot cheaper.
I mean, I'd do it.
Well,
You wouldn't have to pay me.
Apart from the lefto lawyers who would be taking us through every appeals process.
Lawyers will always get richer.
Exactly.
That's the rule.
That's the trouble.
Let's go to Phil. He's in Hertfordshire. Hello, Phil.
Good morning, Julie and Philip. Good morning.
Good morning. What do you want to say?
Regarding the shoplifting, what I would like to do and what I would do are two different things. I would like to obviously step in and apprehend and assist the security guards, etc. However, that's not going to happen because if the perpetrator is injured or gets hurt and then puts a complaint in against me, I am going to be prosecuted.
Yep, exactly. Although, you know what? In those scenarios, go for a jury trial. But again, you've still got that hanging over you for probably 2 years.
Got all that, you've got all the hassle, you've got the annoyance, you've got the stress.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, but also, I mean, that's if they get hurt. As a previous caller pointed out, you could get hurt. You know, they arm themselves often.
Absolutely, you don't know what they've got in them pockets.
Yeah,
100%. And this is where, unfortunately, this country's turning into a slum.
Yep.
And there's no other ways about it. And I hope all these lefties and these wokes are very happy with how our country and what it's turning into, because they're contributing to this.
Yeah, that said, you say that. Tories were in charge for 14 years. This didn't happen overnight on July the 5th.
Yeah, well, were they liberals in disguise, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, but again, always making it. I mean, I'm with Tony Blair in terms of tackle crime, tackle the causes of crime. Yeah, there's a reason why some people turn to crime and some people don't. Some people make bad choices. Some people are born in difficult circumstances. Harder to make the right choices. However, you still have to tackle the actual crime. I mean, and the reality is, I remember there was that experiment, wasn't there, with the bike theft outside Scotland Yard, and they realised that basically you arrest and put away. People who commit a bike theft. Basically, bike theft goes down 60% because it's not everybody. Everyone you pass in the street isn't a shoplifter. There are a small number of people carrying out a huge number of crimes, impacting a huge number of businesses and individuals, and frankly, intimidating the general public as well. You wouldn't. You're not having to build 5 new prisons to put these people in.
There has to be a deterrent, whether it's people illegally coming into the country, whether it's shop theft, bike theft, or anything else. If there isn't a deterrent, it will just keep going.
Exactly, Phil. Thank you very much indeed. But another thing, Philip. Again, people like Phil, and I think you. And me, even though I'm not a strong man. I mean, women simply don't have the physical strength. My instinct would be to step in, and I can see a point when, and I have stepped in scenarios where people are being hurt, things. But I can see a point when I'm certainly will confront people who breaking the law in front of me. But I can see a point where. You have to ration. No, I can't do this because I'm going to get hurt. This isn't going to work out well for me. But there's an instinct that some of us have. Some of us are just sort of in you go people, and some of us aren't. I think you could. You're trained. You can handle yourself. I'm not. But I do worry that people, the powerlessness that people feel that you can't step in, is very debilitating. It's very damaging. I think it hurts people to the core, because that feeling that you can't make sure that your surroundings are safe and people are obeying the rules. That you know why people get really, really angry if everyone's queuing and then someone pushes the front, and people will get violent about that because we're obeying the rules and you're not. But we need to have like a whole community, countrywide This is not happening anymore. Agreement.
So society turns the other head whenever something goes on, and the behaviour that you ignore is the behaviour that you accept, and this is where it's actually a wider societal problem.
Well, exactly. I think the same. I mean, genuinely, even down to things like, I'll be on the tube on the way home, and someone is eating a tangerine, and they drop the tangerine on the floor, the tangerine skin on the floor, and I've gone, excuse me, would you mind not dropping your rubbish on the floor? And they've gone, what's your problem? Well, my problem is you've just dropped rubbish on the tube. It's going to be there all day. All the people coming home from work later are going to... And we'll say, I have to pay my tube fare. My tube fare will help pay for the cleaners to clean up because you made this. And I've had other people say, why are you bothering him? I've actually had other people, when I've said to someone politely, could you please not drop your rubbish on the floor? They've actually said, what's your problem? And I've literally gone, you're part of my problem. The fact that it doesn't bother you that someone is dropping litter like that on a public transport, like, why doesn't it bother you?
I know, and this is what's wrong with society. If you start to accept small levels of bad behaviour, it just builds and builds and builds to the point where we are at the moment, where house burglaries don't get priority, shoplifting doesn't get priority, car thefts, almost £100,000 cars getting stolen, £100,000.
I don't care if you've got an old banger. If it gets stolen, it's still yours, and you've worked for it, and you didn't have a right for it not to be taken by someone else. The doctor team said we're going to have to move on. You and I could do this for the next hour and a half quite happily. Do get your calls in. I can't believe we're alone in this. There's more of us. We need to take back control. There's a phrase. Do you remember when that? Anyway, 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Up next, we are going to be talking about one thing we definitely don't have control of, and that's the illegal migrants. We're also going to be talking to retired Scotland Yard Detective Inspector about how we tackle shoplifting. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. 11:36 is the time. Philip Ingram is also still with me. We're joined also by Robert Bates. He's Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. A very good morning to you.
Morning, Julia. Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much for joining us. Well, we have got this story this morning, and apparently it's very good value for money and it's totally justified. But we taxpayers are shelling out £3,000 a day to pay for new clothes and shoes for Channel migrants. I mean, how many? I mean, where are they doing the shopping? What sort of pricing bar are we looking at here?
Well, it's completely irrelevant where they're doing their shopping, because the fact is they don't need to be doing it. These people are already being incredibly well clothed by a whole cohort of charities that are bending over themselves and clambering over one another to be the ones that provide the footwear, the clothing. You know, anecdotally, if you stand outside a migrant hotel and observe the people coming and going, they're incredibly well kitted out. They've got perfectly white trainers on, they've got nice earrings, they've got a real fetch that effectively should put them on a catwalk. So the fact that we're having to shell out thousands of pounds each and every day to put these people in incredibly comfortable situation is ridiculous. This, of course, comes on top of the the other expenditures, the actual accommodation, the food, the bicycles that they're getting, the mobile phones. You know, the list goes on.
Wait, hold on a minute. Hold on. Whoa. Row that back a little bit. I mean, I was going to mention about the mobile phones. People give mobile phones, although it's weird because they all seem to have mobile phones when they are making their booking on the boat, and when they're on the boat, they're often filming themselves and the like, aren't they? But they've been given bicycles?
Yeah, there are accounts in certain councils around the country where these councils are working hand in hand with local charities and churches to actually provide these people with bicycles. And, you know, there's a really offensive image that I will never forget of, you know, seeing hardworking Brits on their way to work, stood at a bus stop, sheltering, freezing cold. And, you know, you've got illegal migrants cycling past them on these brand new bicycles. So
where are they going?
Really stopped.
They're not on their way to work, are they? They're not allowed to work. Ha, ha, ha.
Well, an incredibly important business somewhere around the constituency, I'm in no doubt.
I mean, you're as angry as I'm sure our audience is right now at this. And the thing is, you think, OK, so I suppose people arrived on a boat and they've been capsized, they've only got one set of clothes, they're going to need clothes, they're in our care, what do we do? But as you say, if the charities are falling over themselves to give them all this clothing anyway, why on earth is the taxpayer being forced to fund any of it? I'm sure. And again, you know, take them down the local charity shop if you need to do so. But I mean, what's amazing is this information only came out because, as always, a freedom of information request. It's never freely offered this, but the government has said it's justified. And the total cost, you think, £3,000 a day. You know, that's not just for one migrant. It's a lot of people, but it's £4 million over the past 3 years. They say that cost is justified, and of course that comes on top of the, let's say, billions that's being spent on their accommodation, food, and other costs.
Yeah, you're right. So it is a small amount by comparison to the actual overall asylum bill, which, as we all know, is in the very high billions. But I think what it really represents is the contempt that there currently is in place, the two-tiered system that, you know, the British taxpayer is being expected to stump up the money, and it's not actually going to benefit themselves, benefit their families or their communities. It's going to these people who have shown absolute contempt for our laws and our borders and have broken into our country and are now living a life of Riley, effectively, at our expense across the board.
Yeah. I mean, I was wondering if someone, their house burns down, and unless you've got insurance, and an awful lot of people don't have insurance, so, you know, does the government just come along and buy them new clothes and give them a bicycle and phones? I have a funny feeling that doesn't happen.
No, well, of course it wouldn't happen, because it would be happening to a British person. As we know at the moment, as we've seen over the last 6 or 7 years, the British establishment really do not care one diddly squat about our well-being. It's all about making sure that the ECHR is happy, that these international bodies aren't going to be looking over their shoulder and saying, oh, well, you're not quite adhering to your obligations under the Refugee Convention, or, you know, this charter or that charter. So the problem is we've got a professional class in politics that are predominantly from legal backgrounds and are absolutely terrified of offending any obligation that they think we've got.
Well, I mean, also just virtue signaling at the latest dinner party. Well, I mean, this news has come out on the day that we've got Labour's landmark law to tackle the small boats crisis. Sorry, quote, smash the gangs. Remember that? We're doing that. It's going to actually, this is interesting, it's going to retain the ban on migrants claiming modern slavery protections. Now, claiming a modern slavery, you know, that was something that Theresa May had brought in, became basically a problem because everybody said they'd been trafficked. They absolutely hadn't paid $3,500 to the migrant boat people. They were trafficked to Britain. They are a victim of modern slavery. And when the Tories did actually plan to brought this in, Labour were apoplectic about it and saying how immoral this was and how terrible this was. But they've got their new law to tackle this, but they're going to keep exactly the same rules, that they can't claim modern slavery protections, i.e. get to stay in the country no matter what.
Well, I imagine that somewhere in Downing Street, people are starting to realise that the problem isn't quite as simple as they made out when they came up with their smash the gangs slogan, and therefore they're actually having to try and keep those measures in place that they were so appalled by whilst in opposition. Of course, this doesn't actually improve the situation. It just means that they're not going to make it worse, which is something, I suppose, given the standards of Keir Starmer's government.
I mean, that's as good as it gets with this government, isn't it? It's not going to get any worse than it already was. I mean, I'll take that as a win.
Well, precisely, and let's not forget they also said that they would not be removing the cap on those people coming via safe and legal routes that was also introduced by the Conservative government. So we've now got the Labour Party effectively making their pitch. Look, we know things are bad, but we promise we're not going to do things that would deliberately make the situation even worse. And if that is really where we are in this issue with this crisis, then I think we are going to see the problem continue to rumble on all the way up to the next general election. And we know who that ultimately will benefit politically.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I cannot see this going away anytime soon. I mean, again, both illegal migration and legal migration. We saw those stats on legal migration only yesterday, or 2 days ago. Absolutely shocking figures. They really are. Thank you so much for joining us, Robert Bates. He's Research Director of the Centre for Migration Control. He's rightly angry about it. This is, again, I think the government, because they spend so much money, I think there's an awful lot of things. Well, it's only £3,000 a day. It's only $4 million a year. This is small fry compared to what we spend on billions and everything else. But Philip, take care of the pennies, the pounds will take care of themselves. Take care of the 4 million. And the billions will take care of themselves.
And we've got these hundreds coming in a day, costing us £3,000 a day, who are illegal. They're not refugees, and therefore, where does the law start to apply? It's only whenever they've, or should only be whenever they're given that legal status. So we shouldn't have to pay this, and and they are bringing criminals, potential terrorists and all the rest into the country. We've got over 2,000 veterans on the streets.
Yeah.
They don't get any of this.
Absolutely.
They have contributed to the safety and security of this country.
And they're on the streets largely as a result of the problems that they've had since leaving
and there's
the
not
service.
enough money to deal with those issues and everything else. But there's enough money to give mobile phones to people who come into this country illegally.
I loved Donald Trump's new press secretary. Everyone was bleating on about, she's the youngest, but I couldn't care less what her age is, or she's a woman, or I couldn't care less. But I did like what she had to say when the usual sort of virtue signalling American media person asked, how many of the people who are being deported, the illegal migrants being deported, have criminal convictions or criminal records? And how many of them are criminals? And she said, all of them, 100%. They're here illegally. They've committed a crime. I love that. I mean, that's the thing. We still have so many in Labour, in government, as advisors, civil service, everyone involved in this whole area, who still genuinely do believe that there's no such thing as an illegal migrant. People, they think these people are genuinely fleeing war-torn places and need, therefore, to be here, as opposed to, the first neighbouring country, if that were the case, that people have a right to live anywhere. And it's fascinating, these people, they think that, and at the same time, they make damn sure they live in a nice area, with their kids in a nice catchment area of a good school, and they make damn sure that their world is not impacted by this. And they talk a good game on this, but they don't live it.
Yeah, and again, we should follow what Trump has done with Colombia. He tried to send them back. Colombian president said, no, we're not going to give you permission for a US military aircraft to land. He then put a 25% tariff on everything. Yeah. If we did the same to Iraq, to Pakistan, it doesn't matter in trade. But if we threatened them, because part of Brexit was giving us the freedom to do that as an independent country.
Oh, were we supposed to take advantage of that?
We need to start hitting in that way.
Well, if you want to see the quality of our civil servants who often get in the way of these things, I just want to get very briefly to one other story, which is the story about the diplomat who very famously, quite some years ago, left top secret classified MOD papers at a bus stop. He took them in his bag and then they fell out of his bag. He's being lined up for a new top job as the UK's NATO ambassador. This is Angus Lapsley. Back in 2021, he had papers which contained, extraordinarily, the exact number of soldiers located around Kabul. He left them at a Kent bus stop. The 50-page dossier was marked secret, UK eyes only, including details of elite US soldiers as well. It was picked up by a member of the public, handed to the BBC, not to the police, but handed to the BBC, I think quite rightly by them. It's a good thing we knew about it. But apparently, no, he's still being lined up for a promotion, and he would be... He's already Assistant Secretary General for Defence Policy, and he could be our NATO ambassador. Really?
Well, two things about this. He's probably going to be the individual who's going to look after every document more securely than anyone else now that this has happened. But the second thing is, I understand there was top secret material in the stuff that was left as well. To break the rules and bring that...
shouldn't be in your bag.
Shouldn't be in your bag. Even secret UKIs only. It is controlled in a register. You can't take it out of a building without permission in certain ways where you know it's there and everything else. This was unregistered material from what I understand.
Well, yeah, but again, my question is, why did you want it?
Well, exactly.
Oh, God, let's ask the right questions. And again, no one gets punished for this stuff because, civil servants, effectively.
You get promoted.
Yeah, absolutely. Extraordinary, isn't it? 11:47 is the time. Up next, going to talk more about shoplifting. We'll try and take more of your calls in the next hour as well. Plenty more coming up. This is Talk.
Their first budget gave a lot of extra money to employing more people on higher salaries. Now, Trump not only done what you rightly highlighted tonight, but something much bigger in terms of controlling total costs of his overmighty government. And that is, he said to all these people in public administration, you come back into the office 5 days a week, and here's an offer, he says, if you don't want to do that, I'll pay you off because I'm quite happy for you to cancel your jobs and I'll give you a bit of compensation and we'll have a much slimmer government.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. It's coming up to 11:51. Let's talk more about shoplifting. I've been asking you today to get in touch, and my goodness me, you have been, about shoplifting. I know there's lots of other big issues in the world. I know, we talked about Heathrow runway. You're welcome to call in on any of those big issues as well. But retail bosses say shoplifters who brazenly steal and attack shop workers are now out of control. They fear no consequences. Why? Because there are no consequences. I want to know what you would do to tackle this. And we've certainly seen the latest crime figures. They came out at 9:30 20 this morning for England and Wales, and they do show a clear increase in the number of shoplifting offences, up 23% in just a year. They say it's 493,000 offences last year. That doesn't touch the size. Most of the local shopkeepers I know in my local high street don't even bother reporting those crimes because they know the police aren't going to turn up and they're not going to do anything. It's a load of admin. Why even bother? Oh, by the way, you'll be surprised to learn offences involving knives or sharp instruments increased by 4% as well. I know, we're all surprised. Robbery up by 4%. And what a surprise. We have seen a small fall in the number of homicides and offences involving firearms. So, you know, well done, everybody. Let's talk to Hamish Brown, MBE. He's a retired Scotland Yard Detective Inspector and joins us now. Good morning to you, Hamish.
Good morning to you, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. I do think that most people who've thought about this for a nanosecond or even aware of it are just, frankly, fed up to the back teeth with shoplifters basically brazenly just wiping out a whole shelf of stock, walking out, not being challenged, nothing happens to them, shopkeepers tearing their hair out because the police won't even turn up when they've got a video of it, they even know the ID of the person doing it. It's organised crime, a lot of it. What can we do to tackle it?
Well, I think there are two issues here. Quite rightly, you raised the shoplifting, but at the same time, and I think you've alluded to it, is violence in the workplace.
Yeah.
Now, shopkeepers deserve to be protected. There's no two ways about that. And with that, there are ordinary people like you and me who go shopping and pay for our goods. Yeah. And it's absolutely galling to see people walk past you, not paying at all, not being challenged and getting away with it. And if they are challenged, that's where the violence will come in. So therefore, I say when we couple both together, it is of paramount importance that the police do turn up because they're there to protect people, not, and they'll object to me saying this, not to condone stealing.
Yeah. Yes, by not turning up, they're condoning stealing. By ever arresting the person who's trying to stop them, they're condoning stealing. But the police officers, it seems, often feel they've got their hands tied behind their back.
Oh, absolutely. They have competing demands. They have a difficult job, many commitments. And someone somewhere has decided a line has to be drawn. I personally think they got that wrong because we all deserve to be protected and the police should be out there. Now, there are different types of shoplifting. I think we should be mindful of this. Yes, there are those people who are desperately short of money and go and steal.
It's a tiny number.
Just to survive. However, and I've done a lot of court work since retirement, and one shoplifting after another is called acquisitive crime. That means people steal to sell and then support a habit like a drug habit.
They steal to order a lot. Genuinely, I've seen them literally videoing. They go in, local shop that, a chemist that's got a load of makeup brands. They literally stand across the street, and managers told me, pointed the people out. They stand across the street, they watch, they wait for them to put the product out. Well, they have to have the product out, they can't sell it otherwise. And they literally wait, and then 2 or 3 of them come in, sweep the shelves and run away with it. And there's nothing the police do.
Yes, I can well believe that, because the commodities that are stolen, that this isn't baked beans and those sort of things. It's going to be the more high value goods. Steaks, actually, but very much so. I mean, they're pretty expensive.
Yeah, if someone offers you a cheap steak randomly, they've probably stolen it. Probably not a good idea to buy it. But that's the thing. This stuff is being sold to people. People are buying it. There's a market for it. So there's an element where you could, try and tackle that side. But we know this isn't like, it's not like half the population's paying for stuff and the other half isn't. It's a tiny number of people in the big scheme of things carrying out a huge number of crimes. They do it all day, every day, down the high street. The police largely know who they are. The shopkeepers know who they are. They close the doors. My little area, they literally lock the doors between a couple of hours a day because that's the peak shoplifting time. And we only let in people we recognise as customers. I mean, where are the police? This is easy to catch, easy to convict. They've got video footage of this stuff. Why aren't they doing that? And why? I mean, I asked that. I had my bag stolen. It was on camera. 1st of June last year. No one's been charged yet, and they've known his name and they've had a picture of him for the last 8 months. I mean, it's just madness.
Well, it doesn't really support the police when that sort of scenario is given, but time after time, people say, look, I've got the evidence, and the police come out of this badly, and they really need the public on their side. So I do urge a change of heart. But when I think back, most of my service was in the West End, and Oxford Street itself, there was an Oxford Street shoplifting unit for the police. And the resources into this were huge. And I'd hear it come on the radio, one English-speaking adult shoplifter, which is relatively easy to deal with, until you dealt with a juvenile, a youth.
Yeah.
They couldn't speak English, therefore an interpreter comes in.
Yeah, and then it's massive. But they also do flash mobs. I've been around Oxford Street before, Oxford Regent Street, where there are huge numbers of staff, in high-vis, guys standing outside the shops, not even just the high-end ones. They're standing outside some of just the major, regular high street stores most of us shop in. And they're saying, I said, what's going on? Oh, there's rumours of flash mobs of thieves coming. And basically the police vans parked over. Okay, everyone's prepared for that because there's rumours about it happening. But this is a huge cost to retailers as well. They're basically having to hire private security to stop, being, when we've seen these footage, places like LA and San Francisco and New York. We need to just knock this stuff out straight away. What do you make of one of my suggestions from one of my callers earlier, that actually a little bit of public flogging wouldn't go amiss?
Well, perhaps that will come in if there's another general election. But in the absence of that, maybe some sort of deterrent. I'm not going to blame the shops at all, because they put things on display which are easy to pick up, and they want to sell them. But
no, I don't think shops should have to put a tag on anything. I don't.
No, I agree. But if we're looking, I pay like just about everyone else for house insurance. We all have to take some measures, whether we like it or not. So I think the shops as well, what preventive measures they can take. But the difficulty is, whatever is used, particularly if staff are involved, that cost is passed on to the consumer, the law-abiding consumer.
Exactly. As I say, these people are stealing not just from the shops, they are stealing from us as well. Really appreciate your comments there. Hamish Brown, retired Scotland Yard Detective Inspector. Philip Ingram, we've been talking about all this all morning. Look, there's so many other, I know, big picture stuff, but I do think that, this stuff kind of does eat away at a society, social cohesion, when people just go, oh, well, when the shopkeepers have to go, oh, well, and we get into situations, same with the knife crime. When you have Idris Elba, who I'm sure means well, and he's actually been a campaigner on knife crime for many years, and on knife crime, he's saying he thinks maybe not all kitchen knives need to be sold with a point to them. They could be blunted, because they're less likely to kill. And you think, I think you've got the wrong end of the problem, mate. I mean, by the way, every kitchen knife I need always needs a point. That's why I'm using them as a kitchen knife. Otherwise, I'd use a butter knife. People just get the wrong end of the problem, like, oh, well, shops do more and tagging things. No. People need to be afraid of stealing because they will be punished severely. Yeah,
and anything could be turned into a weapon. I saw a video the other day of screwdrivers being used as weapons to threaten people. Shopkeepers, stores are taking this into hand. They are getting other technologies to try and help.
I think shops are doing everything they can, and there comes a point when they can't do anything more. And again, their own staff risking prosecution if they tackle people who are stealing from them and us. Keep your calls coming in, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for your company. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk, the home of common sense. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker or watching on YouTube or on your connected device, great to have your company. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking to a former Labour Special Advisor about, this big rift look like it's coming up in the Labour Party after the PM and the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, announced the government's backing for a third runway at Heathrow. This is all part of the Chancellor's growth strategy, although Michael O'Leary of Ryanair fame has said the runway won't even be ready before 2015 and says she hasn't got a clue. And meanwhile, the London Mayor Sadiq Khan, along with many other Labour figures, has said he'll fight against the plans because of noise, pollution and, he claims, climate change. Always comes back to that, doesn't it? Plus, the taxpayer spending £3,000 a day on providing new clothes and shoes to illegal channel migrants. Some are also offered free mobile phones and, guess what, bicycles as well. The Home Office, though, says the £4 million bill over 3 years is justified, although a guest we spoke to earlier points out that actually they're given free clothes and shoes by charities. Why on earth does the taxpayer have to pay as well? Plus, we'll be talking about my favourite subject, Brexit, in this hour as well. Tomorrow marks the 5th anniversary of Britain leaving the EU, and I'll be chatting to Brexit champion and independent peer, Baroness Kate Hoey, about that. Plus, we're going to be talking about statues. Do you remember when all those statues were being toppled by Black Lives Matters and others, and people like the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, was cheering it all on? Well, he set up an organisation within the London Mayoralty to basically set up a whole load of woke art, woke statues around our capital city to replace the unwoke ones. Apparently he spent more than £2 million of taxpayers' money on the scheme, which is great, isn't it? Because London hasn't got any other problems at all, has it, that need dealing with. We'll talk about all of that coming up. I'm delighted to say Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer, still joins me in the studio. Let's just get up to date with events overseas before we go to our first guest, though. Latest from that horrific crash in Washington, D.C., where a passenger jet coming into land at Ronald Reagan Airport in the centre of D.C. Was in a collision with an army helicopter with 3 US soldiers. Some 64 people on board the plane and the 3 US soldiers in the helicopter are believed to have perished. Some 30 bodies have now been recovered from the Potomac River. Donald Trump has messaged on Truth Social, his social media site, that this is an accident that shouldn't have happened. We spoke earlier to a former BA pilot, an aviation expert, about how these things might happen. These accidents are thankfully very rare. It's kind of why they make the news. But this is a horrific crash, and it does appear, and there's actually footage of the collision taking place, it does appear to be just a terribly, terribly tragic accident that did not need to happen.
Yeah, absolutely horrific. No accident needs to happen, unfortunately. When human beings are involved in something, you don't know how someone gets distracted, they miss something, they misinterpret something, and in such busy airspace, accidents like this, you very, very rarely, thank goodness, but do happen.
We expect there will be an updated press conference in America in the next half hour about this. Of course, this is happening in DC 5 hours before us, so 7:30 their time in the morning. This crash happened at night in the dark. The search has been going on overnight in freezing conditions. The river's in about 1 degree. Realistically, you're talking about survival if you survive the crash, which is unlikely. The collision, 1 minute, 2 minutes max before, which is absolutely tragic. We know children were on board that flight, so we're going to get some more details in the next half hour. We'll bring those to you as soon as we get them here on Talk. Also, of course, we've seen that a hostage released by Hamas and other militants in Gaza. 3 Israelis, 5 Thai workers, farm workers from Israel who were taken hostage on October the 7th, 2023, have been released. We expect more than 100, quite a lot more than 100 prisoners, convicted Palestinian prisoners in Israeli prisons to be released. But again, more footage showing just, Hunger Games style, sort of theatricals by Hamas, the flags, the soldiers with their balaclavas on, the screaming crowds chanting the name of the final hostage to be released.
female Israeli soldier hostage, once again in military garb, paraded before the baying crowd. Of course, she was captured along with her other women who were captured and abused in her pyjamas.
Yeah. And they're dressing them up in uniform to try and bay out to the crowd that this is, these are soldiers, and somehow or other it was justified. It's disgusting. They're sticking two fingers up at the Israelis. This is why this ceasefire and peace agreement isn't going to last. And they're still holding other hostages, like they're still holding a young baby hostage,
who we can only hope is still alive.
Well, exactly. And
but the baby and the toddler are not on the list of the first 33 hostages to be released in the first 6-week period. That is the biggest concern.
That's the worrying thing. But Hamas,
the baby that has marked 2 birthdays behind,
Hamas are doing this because they know that as soon as they lose all of the hostages, they lose their bargaining power, and then rightly so. I think Israelis should take the gloves off.
Oh, if I were Israel, get all the hostages back and then go in again. Yeah. I'm sorry, that's what I would do, because I mean we cannot have Hamas left in control of Palestine, of Gaza at all. Absolutely not. Right, let's move on though. Let's come back to British politics. More on that. Any developments on those stories, we'll bring them to you here first here at Talk. Let's welcome Paul Richards to the show. He's a former Labour Special Advisor and joins us now. A very good afternoon to you.
Hello, good afternoon.
Thank you very much. Very well indeed. I'm wondering what you made of the big announcement from Rachel Reeves yesterday. We'd had an awful lot trailed about what she was going to say in her speech about how she was going to be boosting growth, and we've had it trailed for weeks and weeks on end. The big announcement, of course, made a lot of the headlines today, has been about the Heathrow third runway, which she said not just that she backed, we kind of had a hint of that at the weekend, but that the government backs as collective cabinet responsibility on that as well. Although interestingly, it was quite noticeable. The Energy Secretary, Ed Miliband, who's fought vehemently against the third runway at Heathrow, was nowhere to be seen. Interesting also that the Prime Minister, PMQs, again backing this, even though only a few years back he happily voted against the third runway. Is Rachel Reeves right that a third runway at Heathrow will boost growth? Or is Michael O'Leary, the boss of Ryanair, right, who says she hasn't got a clue? Heathrow is a dead cat. It won't come until 2040 or 2050 at the earliest. Who's right?
Well, the speech was absolutely mega, and it did have an awful lot in it. And some of it had been trailed, like you say, and some of it, was announced and then ditched under the Conservatives. The Heathrow announcement, absolutely at the heart of that. But don't lose sight of the other things too: redevelopment of the Oxford-Cambridge Arc and the redevelopment of Old Trafford, where I will be on Saturday. It's quite a big package of stuff, plus unlocking our pensions and all kinds of other things. And I think the Heathrow announcement is the right thing to do. It's only one more runway. I was reflecting, just waiting to come on air, that if this was China, they are planning to build over 100 new airports next year, in the next 12 months. And in the last 5-year plan, they had 40 built. And we're arguing over a single runway for years. And yes, if Michael O'Leary says it's going to take a long time to do, well, he's not wrong. It does take time to build that level of infrastructure. But isn't it a good job of getting on with it? And isn't it a shame, Julia, we didn't do it 10 years ago, because it'd be ready now?
Well, it is a shame. I would have liked it to be done sometime earlier in my lifetime, because it's been discussed my entire journalism career, and indeed since before I was born. It's interesting you're saying that we should emulate China. You know what China's also building? Coal-fired power stations. That's what they're using to power a lot of the factories that they make all those solar wind panels with. Should we emulate them on that?
I'm no fan of China at all, either politically or economically.
But they build runways.
Just pointing out that they have been getting on with it.
Yeah, but it's not just China, it's also every other Western nation. Schiphol Airport, we're an overcrowded nation, we know that. We've got, Heathrow is near close to London, a lot of people live in that area. Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam, this is a very populated area. They've got 6 runways. It's just in one airport, it's a major hub airport. Look, I'm massively in favour of it, but I don't understand. Why
then we are agreed. Good, because that's they're going to get.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and I agree with Rachel Reeves, and I agree with Keir Starmer. But why did they then vote against it just 6 years ago?
Well, I think there's a lot of difference between when you're an opposition MP and when you are facing down this enormous...
No. Hold on a minute. The economics haven't changed. The nonsense climate arguments haven't changed. The noise and pollution, whatever arguments. There's been no change in 6 years.
Hang on, the argument for growth has changed. And I think if you're...
we didn't want growth in 2018.
if you're on if you've bet the farm, if you bet the entire house on growth as a government, you're going to unleash all of the levers you can to get growth. And that's why Rachel's speech was so full of these fairly
mega. You described it as mega. Yeah. No, I don't understand. The argument, the Heathrow third runway will deliver growth when it's eventually there. It just will take many decades. But it would have done that in 2018. Are you telling me that the Labour Party's official government, official Labour Party policy in 2018 was not in favour of growth?
Well, it was the Corbyn years, so God knows what it was in favour of.
I hate to tell you, the man that you wanted to be elected as Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, happily served in his shadow cabinet to try and make him Prime Minister.
Well, I don't know what conversations went on behind the scenes, but we are now.
If you serve in the shadow cabinet of somebody like Jeremy Corbyn, you want him to be Prime Minister, you've signed up to it, haven't you?
I'm pretty sure we did not sign up to him becoming Prime Minister.
If you campaigned for Labour to win the 2019 general election, did the 2017 general election, you wanted him to be Prime Minister. Otherwise, you wouldn't campaign for Labour, would you? There were Labour people who people like, Ian Austin, who left the Labour Party.
People were campaigning for their local Labour candidates. But, back to Heathrow, I think there are going to be environmentalists who object. And there will be a row inside the Labour Party, because there always is. But I think the big objective of growth is overarching and is the most important.
Why do you think the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, Labour Mayor, of course, why do you think that he is opposed to growth then? Because he is opposed to the Heathrow third runway and says he's going to fight it legally or otherwise.
Well, he's entitled to do so because he's not in the cabinet and he is the city mayor. And if he feels that it's not right for London, that's an argument he can make. But if the government says this is good for the country and it will create an awful lot of jobs in London, you said about we'll have to wait for the growth, but the growth will come because of all the jobs in the supply chain, in the construction and the apprenticeships and all the people supplying them, right now, as soon as it's announced. So it's a 10-year programme or whatever it is, but it will have benefits in London right now. And, I suspect that Sadiq Khan will start to see some of those benefits. The trade unions should welcome this because these are going to be good, high-quality jobs.
Trade unions are very keen on all this stuff. But here's the thing. I don't think it's going to happen unless the law is changed on net zero, because the law, which, again, Tories put in place, Labour happily supported as well, and support it to this day, there's a law in place that actually prevents anything, the government pursuing any policy which actually is in contravention of its abilities to meet its net zero targets in 2050, because that is legally set in stone. Building a new airport, and by the way, there is no big revolution in clean fuel that's going to happen in the next 10, 20 years. That's not no one sensible think that's going to happen. So we're going to see more pollution. I personally don't have a problem with more noise pollution and more pollution for us to be able to have more planes and have more growth. I think that is a necessary cost. However, that's going to happen. That's going to be in direct contravention of the net zero law, not just policies, law that Labour supports. So when it's a choice between growth with that third runway and the legal commitment to climate change, which one will Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves choose?
Growth, every time. This is written in there in stone. It's engraved on their hearts.
But climate change is the biggest challenge facing Britain and humanity, is what Keir Starmer has said.
I mean, there's a bit of a false argument, a false dichotomy, because you can get economic growth by investing in, and we've had this conversation.
No, you can't.
Investing in environmental technology.
No, you can't. No, you need to have cheap energy. You can't have cheap, reliable energy unless you're using fossil fuels.
You can be a world leader in green tech, and that's something that Ed Miliband would sign up to. On the other hand, we do need airports because people like flying and they should be able to go on their holidays, and it will create growth as well as being...
But it's not about people liking flying. It's about the ability of British companies to export goods around the world. Yeah. This is fundamental. No, but I'm sorry, you can't be a leader in green tech or any of this stuff. You're not going to be this AI revolution and this Oxbridge, Silicon Valley. Well, that's not going to happen if people can't afford to employ people, and people can't afford, they don't face the capital gains tax rise, and also the high energy costs. You're not going to develop AI in Britain when you've got energy costs that are 4 or 5 times that for businesses here that they are for America. It's not going to happen.
I think the Silicon Valley sort of opportunity is enormous there. There's no reason why we can't.
There'll be great inventions, and then as soon as it gets off the ground, they'll go off to America and they'll create the jobs and the wealth and pay the tax there, because we know that's what's going to happen, because it's what's already happening.
But then we need to stop that brain drain.
How do we stop that? By making it possible for those companies to thrive here. No company can thrive here with energy costs where they are, and those energy costs are a direct result of net zero policies.
No, I disagree with that.
Well, you can disagree. You can disagree with whether it's raining or not, but it is or it isn't.
Yeah. I think you can unleash the British genius for innovation and creativity. I think you can unleash our entrepreneurialism, and you can do all of those things.
We've got all of that. We've got all of that.
At the same time, not destroying...
Paul, we've got all of that. And it doesn't matter how much of that you've got if you can't afford to run the factory because you can't afford to fuel it.
Yeah, but I think the announcement yesterday very clearly says that we'll support those companies, particularly in high tech, to create some of those jobs that mean the economy grows.
No. Government doesn't help anyone create jobs. Businesses create jobs by setting up companies that can make a profit. And they can't make a profit if they can't
companies need a framework in which to create those jobs. Of course, government doesn't make jobs, but it can make a situation, a regime, a regulatory regime where companies can.
A tax regime, a regulation, and they can actually, and I'm very in favour of the government sorting out planning and hope we'll see how well that goes.
That's what excites you.
Oh, no, I'm in favour of it. I've been very open. I've been in favour of that. But energy costs is one of the single biggest factors, with the deindustrialisation of Germany, which, by the way, is entering its third year in recession. It's one of the main reasons why America is thriving and Europe is not. And if the government, the Chancellor, Prime Minister, and people like you are going to keep your heads in the sand about that, we are not going to see any of that growth because it's not possible.
Well, let's see. But I think the announcement yesterday, the announcement was a major step forward. You know, we've been criticised for not having any policies. Now we've got more policies than we've even got time to talk about.
But your policies are against the policies you had a year or two ago. I mean, no. I'm sorry, Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer were opposed to the Heathrow third runway about a year ago. I mean, look, no one thinks come on, Old Trafford, that development was going to happen anyway. The Oxford-Cambridge stuff, great, if it happens, if it works. But that's been on the cards.
It's not going to happen anyway. They're only going to happen because the government's going to make sure that they do. And a lot of them have been shelved by the previous government or even just ditched completely. Mm-hmm. And I think some of these, particularly rebalancing the economy away from the southeast, and London is a good idea. I think the opportunities for Manchester with this new development are huge. Oxford and Cambridge Arc is a great thing. A new Silicon Valley. I mean, these are all fantastic.
Oh, it's great. I mean, if it all happens, it's absolutely fantastic. Here's the thing. It's all so good, and it's a mega speech. That was the word you used, first of all. Why are businesses, why business leaders, whether it's the Federation of Small Businesses or big business representatives like CBI, why are they not falling over themselves going, this is brilliant, thank God we've got Rachel Reeves?
Have you not seen the responses today? The CBI welcomed it, the businesses welcomed it, all kinds of people said this is the right way forward. And I think
it is there are a lot of provisos with that. They welcome what's being done, but they're also saying, but you clobbered us with 25 billion in national insurance extra costs, you're clobbering us with capital gains tax, you've still got massive regulation, you're not actually dealing with the stuff that really makes a difference, plus energy costs. They're saying that as well.
I think they will benefit from these announcements.
Well,
and I
let's
think
hope so.
Both in the economy, then everyone's happy, even you.
Even me. Hey, I don't care who's in charge as long as they do a good job. I'm an equal opportunity welcome of this. Can I ask you just finally? I just want to ask you about the 2.4 million Brits who are receiving sickness benefits without needing to seek work. Is there any likelihood that the Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall is going to get to grips with this massive explosion in the number of people since lockdown, in particular? Though it was already going wrong before then, and it's happened under the Tory watch. I completely accept that. I hold them to account on this as well. But is there any chance that she's going to get to grips with this and actually cut down on that benefits bill for people who, let's be honest, statistically comparable with other countries, can't possibly need this money?
I mean, I think she is looking at it closely because something is going on out there in society. And to make a serious point, we're not going to get a thriving economy if people feel that they can just opt out of work. I'm a member of the Labour Party, clues in the name. We believe in the ability of work and everyone should be working as hard as they can. And I think that there are people that don't. Now, some people, of course, do deserve support, and let's not undermine those people. There are people who genuinely
there'd be more money for them if there weren't people who were defrauding us.
Exactly. But there are people who are cheating the system. And
there are many people cheating the system. That's the issue.
Okay. Well, that is a serious point. It is a serious point.
Okay. Just finally, Donald Trump yesterday basically has announced, if you're a federal employee, you've got until, I think it's one day next week, and it's 4th of Feb, whatever, you need to turn up to work, feet under your desk, and if you haven't, we'll consider you to have resigned your job. Is that what we need in Whitehall? A little bit of tough love, saying thanks very much, civil servants, you haven't deigned to come into Whitehall offices in the last few years, but time to be back at your desk. You can threaten to strike, that's absolutely fine, but actually if you haven't turned up on Monday morning to do your job, you're out of a job.
No, because in the modern world, people can work from home, and they need to make sure people are genuinely working. But a lot of people are far more productive not having to go in on some terrible commute and be knackered when they get to work, and do far more from home. And they can
that extra efficiency, that extra efficiency at work would explain two things, wouldn't it? One, why most private companies are now ordering people back to the office because they want to make their workers less productive, and two, why the public sector has seen absolutely flatlining productivity levels while the private sector has gone up. So that would absolutely explain that, wouldn't it? But everyone's working from home really productively, and all of our public services work brilliantly as a result. I mean, it's obvious, isn't it?
Yeah. I think there's a blended week is better, where you're in the workplace some of the time. So you are talking to other people and interacting and having to get up and get dressed and all the rest of it. But a lot of work that people do can be done at home. If it's sitting reading.
It can be done. The question is whether people are doing that work. There's very little evidence that they are.
Well, we have to treat people like grown-ups, don't we? And assume
that people expect them to do the job they've been asked to do, but we have...
That doesn't have to be a place. Work is an activity and not a place. You don't have to go to an office if you don't need to.
I think it's fine if you're well paid and well motivated in a job that has that sort of work, and that's fine. But I think that's very different from most people's work, and indeed what most civil servants do, most public servants do. And actually, a lot of people thrive from being in the company, in company of others, but also crucially, they have someone overseeing whether they're actually getting anything done. I've worked in a lot of offices over the years. There are plenty of people, even in the private sector, who don't actually get anything done most of the day.
Well, it used to be in the day, back in the day, in Fleet Street, journalists would all be in the pub by lunchtime.
There have been an awful lot of people in the pub at lunchtime, absolutely, and times are very, very, very different now. Everything is being slicked down. Well, yeah, in the private sector, that's the way it's gone. In the public sector, everybody will know people who don't do a full day's work at home.
Well, then you need to treat people properly, manage people properly, but they don't need the physical space.
Manage people properly, and if the manager says, I'd like you in your office, if the manager says, I'd like you in the office, they should turn up to the office, shouldn't they, if they're a grown-up?
Well, if that is the way the office is run. But like I say, the assumption that work is now a place you go to 5 days a week, there's a klaxon in the morning.
It's an assumption. No, it's just a reality for most people. Paul, we're going to have to leave it there. This country's never going to get off its knees, is it? Paul Richards, former Labour Special Advisor, I very much appreciate you joining us from home. Philip, a quick word from you. By the way, your face through that was a picture.
Paul's just given examples of everything that's wrong with Labour. Where do I start? 10 years ago, the runway wasn't built because Starmer Reeves Rayner voted against it, and then got the NIMBY woke lawyers to try and undermine it. The tax policies that are in with the government are going to stop the ideas being turned into companies because the companies are too unaffordable to deal with things. And what he said, which really surprised me and I find shocking, was that Labour's policy was deliberately anti-growth because it was political 6 years ago, but everything's growth now.
Absolutely. Nailed it. 12:25 is the time. Up next, a little bit of breaking news involving Russell Brand and a BBC review into his behaviour. That's coming up next. This is Talk.
We now have a playbook which we can adopt in this country. Donald Trump has set it out for us.
Right.
If France won't take these people back to France, which is where they came from, well, then we should impose sanctions on France. We remove all the fishing licenses for their boats that come into our water with our consent to take our fish.
Right.
Often killing a hell of a lot more than they need, abusing the environmental integrity of British waters.
Yeah.
So instead of paying the French the thick end of £1 billion, which is what we've done, take strong action.
Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. I'm still here with Philip Ingram, MBE, former Senior Military Intelligence Officer. We're going to be talking about Brexit in a moment. It's 5 years tomorrow. 5 years tomorrow that we did actually leave the European Union officially. We'll be talking about that with the Brexit hero, Kate Hoey. Just a breaking news for you. The BBC review into the conduct of Russell Brand during his time with the broadcast, you remember there have been lots of allegations about inappropriate behaviour, has found that a number of people at the BBC felt unable to raise concerns, they say, about the presenter, and believed that Russell Brand would always get his way, and therefore they stayed silent. Now, of course, the actor and comedian denies accusations of any wrongdoing and said all of his sexual relationships have always been consensual. Back in September 2023, Channel 4 dispatches, along with the Times and the Sunday Times, revealed that 4 women had accused him of sexual assaults between 2006 and 2013. Lots of claims about what happened with female staff on shows that he'd worked on at BBC and Channel 4. But look, we're not in a position to make a judgment. We were not there. He's denied any allegations. People should be, innocent until any charges are or not brought, and anyone is proven guilty. But Philip Ingram, this very much echoes, where we were with, Jimmy Savile, Hugh Edwards, and others. Hugh Edwards. I mean, stuff that was going on with Hugh Edwards' office. The behaviour he was exhibiting towards young male members of staff. Absolutely, people were literally basically told, "We'll just kind of put up with it because it's Hugh Edwards." It's Hugh Edwards, and this is what happens with big stars. It happened with Harvey Weinstein on a horrific scale of rape that he was he was doing. I mean, this is the trouble. There's idea that because someone's a star, they can get away with any bad behaviour.
Yeah, and it's taken the BBC so long to go through investigations to bring the truth out to deal with it. If they had a robust policy where everyone felt happy to bring issues up if they were there and confident that the management would look after them no matter where they were, and that was dealt with there and then, none of these
But if everyone's witnessing it and 4 or 5 people say the same thing, and in case of any star, I'm not talking about Russell Brand and others, and you don't say to the star, and again we know Hugh Edwards was given a little talking to, wasn't he? But again, just hey, I don't care who you are, I don't care how big a name you are, I don't care how many royal funerals, I don't care how many big name followers you've got on Twitter, I don't care. If if you do this again, you're out on your ear.
Yeah, exactly. And there needs,
don't know what's complicated about
and again,
that.
it's this is again a reflection of society. It's the behaviour you walk past, is the behaviour you accept. Whether it's shoplifting, whether it's behaviour of stars, whether it's behaviour of other members of staff that there are.
And members of staff will have been completely right about this, because this is what has happened every time, and this is what did happen until it was exposed. Yeah. There we are. Let's go to your phone calls, though, coming in thick and fast still about shoplifting. I'm asking you, as retail bosses say, shoplifters are now brazenly stealing and attacking shop workers, and they are out of control because they fear no consequences, because there aren't any consequences. What would you do to tackle this? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Mark is in Carlisle and wants to have his say. Mark, what would you do?
Well, I've been doing it for 15 years. I'm a filmmaker, and we go with our cameras where there's hotspots, and the police don't want it highlighted.
Yeah.
There was a serious problem in Euston at one point when there was more shops, and there was £1 million a year getting nicked from the station. So we went in there, and we caught 7 in 1 week. They banned me, but not the shoplifters.
I mean, brilliant. I know Euston's a problem. I had the watch that my husband gave me when our daughter was born stolen off my wrist in Euston Station.
Oh,
absolutely
heartbreaking. Everywhere, absolutely everywhere. Of course, I've jailed 96 people, and altogether with my cameras. And the police, every time I get into trouble, you'd think they'd praise me. I get judges' awards, and I get nominated for the Oil Prize of the BBC, etc. But the police never thank me.
Isn't that interesting? Well, because you're doing their job because they're not doing it. Here's the thing. Do you meet individual officers who say, God, thank God you're doing it, Mark, you know, we're just not allowed to, or they want us to worry about hurty words on Twitter or something else? Or do the police officers, even the ones you meet on the ground, are they just like, we just don't care about shoplifting? What is the reaction from them?
Well, take Euston as an example. I met every manager of every shop and they praised me. They used to give me free coffees for sitting there. There was another incident where there was a hotspot where there was 779 incidents in a 1 month period. So I sat in the cafe. They used to give me coffees. And when the superintendent turned up, because I got injured, I get lots of injuries, by the way, jumping on muggers and things. Wow. The superintendent and the cafe said, when this man sits here, they go away. He chases them away. So he put his head in his hands thinking, what are my officers doing low down? Yeah. I think it comes from the top. They don't want it highlighted because 90% of all shoplifting is only found out at audit every quarter.
Yeah, they don't even realise.
It's concealed.
But also, even when police do something, what I found in my local area, like, oh, everyone's complaining, and then they'll have a couple of coppers wandering around in uniform. They're going, well, we're not finding anybody committing these crimes. Well, funny that, they don't do it when you're there, but you're not there 24/7. You're there for 5 minutes once every 3 months.
Yeah.
It's maddening.
Catching these criminals, I've had lots of injuries, and I've been in the NHS system many times. Do you know what the worst thing of the NHS is?
Yeah.
All the nurses at the nurses' station listening to James O'Brien of LBC.
Why would they do that?
That was the biggest pain. That was the painfulest, most experience in the hospital.
I have to say, I do have to have that turned off if I'm in a cab. I have to. I'm not going to lie about that. I haven't thought about that man for years. But there we are. Mark, thank you very much. Keep up the good work. We support you. I know my audience will be supporting you. Got to go to a break in just a couple of seconds. So John is on the line in Walton. John, can we keep this brief? I'm so sorry to have kept you waiting. What do you want to say?
This is basically happening, Julia, because there's no deterrent at all.
Yep.
I mean, when I've been a shoplifter, I've been convicted for it, and I've been sent to prison for it. When I used to shoplift, the store detective dragged you in the back, and the police turned up, but there is no deterrent at all now with shoplifting.
Yeah. That's the thing. And they know there isn't, so they're not afraid. John, I so appreciate your call. I'm so sorry to keep it so brief. Thank you so much. 12:35 is the time. Going to go to a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about big anniversary tomorrow. Remember when we took back control? How's that working out? That's up next. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Welcome back. This is the Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Well, tomorrow, very big anniversary. It's 5 years since that amazing, wonderful evening at 11 p.m. sharp UK time that we took back control and we left the European Union. Things may not have worked out quite how a lot of us hoped and thought they would since then, but I can certainly remember being on stage at that very moment in my Union Jack, you know, Old Spice dress, on stage in Trafalgar Square next to Nigel Farage as the clock rang above us and the bell of Big Ben tolled, and it was 11 p.m. and we were officially out of the EU. I have to say, one of the happiest days of my life. I'm joined now by someone who helped make it happen, Baroness Kate Hoey, independent peer now, former Labour MP and a leading campaigner for Brexit. Very good afternoon to you, Kate.
Good afternoon, Julia, and I remember it well too. It actually makes me feel quite emotional even thinking that night, because just the crowds and everyone just so happy and feeling this was really, really going to change things hugely.
Yeah. Now, that's the question. I keep being told by Remainers, well, I'd say Remainers, people who voted Remain, perfectly reasonable position. Remainers are people who tried to overturn the Brexit referendum without it actually being, you know, put into action first, actually anti-democratic. They'll accept saying, no one supports Brexit anymore. They're completely opposed to it. I've yet to meet a single person who voted Brexit or campaign for Brexit who doesn't still think it was one of the greatest things that British voters have ever done and is proud of their role in it. But I'm not going to lie, it's not gone as well as I'd hoped it to go. What were your hopes, and why do you think it hasn't worked out quite so well?
Well, it hasn't worked out the way I wanted it to. I mean, I voted genuinely to get back to democracy to our country so we could take control of our own lives and our own future. That hasn't happened because we haven't had leadership. We haven't had people. I mean, I'm sure it's not particularly, mentioning Trump, but the way Trump has come in and done what he said he would do, what we didn't do was had that leadership that actually took control back and did the things. So we didn't get rid of we didn't deregulate a lot of the regulations that could have been got rid of. We tried to kind of play nice all the time with the European Union. Still, we kept all the laws that we had, and we had to go through this long process of looking at each one. And sadly, one of the big benefits still, of course, is that we're not actually paying into this sort of £1 trillion now that the European Union has decided since we left to borrow. So we're, financially, we're not directly involved, but there were just so many opportunities and things that hasn't happened. Yeah. But of course, the Remainers, and I think you're right, Julia, I don't meet any Brexiteer who's pleased who would say that they would vote to go back in. What we do need is a government that is actually going to take the advantages that could have been there.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? And that's not just, Keir Starmer, who's, Remainer-in-Chief, and as Shadow Brexit Secretary under Corbyn, actually actively fought against that democratic vote being enacted, which I think is, frankly, it should make him considered unfit for public office. You're anti-democrat. If Trump did that, they'd all be up in arms about it, wouldn't they? But I don't even think we had people who really believed in it from the moment it happened. Theresa May was massively, happily allowed herself to be undermined by her own chief negotiator, Ollie Robbins, basically, handing the EU the negotiation, upper hand immediately. Willing to pay off, billions of money to escape. We sort of tiptoed around. I'm not even sure Boris Johnson really wanted to take action. He was the man, by the way, who kickstarted, absolutely rocketing mass immigration from outside of the EU. Oh yeah, we were taking control, all right, but he didn't obey the actual demands and expectations of the British people. And you should say, we haven't done the deregulation. We've added more regulation. Our own net zero policies are more extreme than the EU's currently. Why do you think there is still this reluctance? Is this just that we just have a Remainer political elite? The majority of Tory MPs voted Remain. We have a Remainer civil service. We have a largely Remainer media as well, and Remainer academia. There actually, there are just so many forces moving against Brexit that even once it happened, they would still like it to fail.
I think you're right about the whole establishment, really, and then let's call it that. But behind the scenes, certainly within the civil service, there was a determination, I believe, to make it as slow as possible, the whole negotiation. So we, as you say, Theresa May agreed to this ridiculous idea where we went, where we had to discuss leaving and money before we actually decided just to go. And also, I think there is, a hope amongst a lot of the Remain people that if they kind of keep saying, look how awful things are. I mean, things are awful in this country at the moment because our own government, both the previous government and this government, have got an economic policy that is actually ridiculous because it's buying that you can get growth, by taxing people more. Yeah. And I just still hope, I'm still very hopeful that, with the rise of reform, but I do think reform, and Nigel Farage himself, I think, needs to start talking more about Brexit again. And we might have to reactivate some of the campaigns locally that were there, because I do think that the Remainers are not going to give up.
No, I mean, they would absolutely love to take us back into the customs union and the like. And I have to say, if we were in a trade area, that was, that was kind of what we'd signed up to. We were quite happy with that. Of course, it was the political side of things that was creating problems for us. But I'm like you. The Remain, and again, I say Remainers rather than Remainers because there's perfectly valid reasons to vote Remain. And those people, the vast number of people who voted Remain and accepted the result, and I know a lot of people who voted Remain who then voted for Boris Johnson in 2019 to get Brexit done because they felt that was the right thing to do, to honour that vote by 52% of the voting population. But the key thing is, I do just think there are just so many people who are just sort of opposed to this being a success, and they talk constantly about economics. Now, again, they're under the illusion that everything's going just fine in Europe, where that Germany hasn't been just entered its third year in recession and is declining economically. So they're in cloud cuckoo land about that anyway. But actually, it wasn't about money for most people. The polling was really clear. What did most people say? And it was like same as you, same as me. The democratic accountability, about national sovereignty, us being in charge of our own rules. But when people say it's not a success, one of the things I always say is, and I'm writing a column about this for the Sun tomorrow, and I say actually, one of the key things for me was we did take back control, because you know what? When the Tories pushed mass immigration, failed to deal with illegal migration, pushed net zero, impoverished us, made bad policy decisions, do you know what we were able to do? Kick them out of office. Now, Labour are already way down in the polls because they've not done what they said they would do. They haven't got the support. Now, whether or not a split right wing is going to leave Labour in power or not, that's neither here nor there. The British voters get to have their say, and no politician in this country ever again can say, sorry, it's not our fault, there's nothing we can do about it, it's the EU. They can't, they're accountable to us.
Exactly, Julia. This was always the thing that the civil servants hid behind, and the government ministers hid behind the fact that it was the EU. And now they don't have that, and that's why the civil service hate it too, because they can't ring up Brussels and get told what to do. Yeah. But I do think that the democratic element, it's our own fault if this country is going, not doing well. It's our own politicians, and we can kick them out. And that's a very, very important lesson. We don't have to go back to that, anti-democratic way where decisions were taken by the European Commission that we had no say in whatsoever. Yeah. And we were kind of, because basically those people who support the European Union so strongly really want to get rid of the nation state. I mean, they don't like it. They want us to be all part of some soggy federal kind of glue that bring us all together. It won't. It'll make us... National boundaries matter, and national identity matters.
Absolutely, these people, they don't believe in borders. They're not proud of our nation's history. No. But also, one of the things I always found just so funny is how this view, the sort of like that, the only civilizing thing in Britain is the EU, and have they, democratic values and liberal thinking, as if they don't have that because of us rather than the other way around. We've survived. We're one of the few nation states in Europe that hasn't been, taken over by a fascist government, or invaded, or by the communist state. We have a proud history of standing on our own 2 feet, our island nation, where we have been able to deliver individual rights and human rights here. We don't need lessons from anyone in Brussels about how to do it.
No, absolutely. And I think we're all going to have quite an interesting time now. I was out for the inauguration and when you listened at the rallies of what Trump was saying, reality is he doesn't like the European Union. I just hope he sticks to what he said about some of the things he's going to do. Otherwise, faith in politicians will be completely gone.
Absolutely. Oh, always good to talk to you. You're absolute hero. Brexit hero, Baroness Kate Hoey, independent peer, former Labour MP. Thank you so much. Philip Ingram?
Yeah, well, I voted Remain, and I voted Remain for two reasons. One, we were the only country that was stopping a federal Europe turning into this soggy goop.
Basically, better in than out, we can... Yeah.
Exactly, we can influence from within. And I was scared that we didn't have the political balls in our leadership to actually take advantage of it, which is unfortunately being proven true. But looking at it now, would I vote Brexit if the vote happened again? Of course I would, because it gives us real opportunities. Yep. We're just not fulfilling those opportunities.
But it doesn't mean we don't have the ability to elect people who would take advantage of those. Thank you very much. It's very interesting to hear. Just some latest out of Washington. Officials have been giving an update on the Washington, D.C. plane crash. The mayor of D.C., Muriel Bowser, says that all Americans share a profound sense of grief over the tragic events. We understand that the main body of the plane was split into 3 different sections, found in waist-deep water, and the recovery operation it's moved from a rescue operation to a recovery operation overnight. They believe that there are no survivors. So we understand different reports of 27 bodies and 30 bodies have now been recovered, but it's believed, I think, 67 people in total perished when that passenger plane arriving at Ronald Reagan Airport in Washington collided with a military helicopter. More on that throughout the day here at Talk. Up next, we are going to be talking about £2 million of taxpayers' cash spent on woke statues commissioned by guess who? You know it, London Mayor Sadiq Khan. That's up next. This is Talk.
Government borrowing costs hit a 27-year high, and the pound is taking a pounding. Gloomy economic data is expected to show inflation and growth are off course.
Let me ask again, and can you please be clear, will Rachel Reeves be your Chancellor for the duration of this parliament?
Rachel Reeves is doing a fantastic job. She has my full confidence. She has the full confidence of the entire party.
Can Rachel Reeves hold on as Chancellor?
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining me. 12:52 is the time. This is Talk. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram's still with me, and I get his thoughts on what our next guest has to say. He's head of campaigns at Taxpayers Alliance. Elliot Keck, good afternoon to you.
Hello, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. This is one of those deep sigh stories, and this is just one of those things where, like, there's a lot of problems in London, our capital city. I don't like to get too London-centric, but, you know, there's a lot of problems. We've got stabbings, we've got goodness knows what going on. I mean, it's just, you know, crime on the streets. We've been talking about shoplifting throughout the show. But Sadiq Khan, the man who is elected Labour London Mayor, who's actually also Commissioner, Police and Crime Commissioner as well, he's decided to spend £2.1 million of taxpayers' cash on a very, very, very important project. Tell us what that project is.
So, yeah, £2.1 million on essentially a commission to investigate London's statues, plaques and all the other commemorative art installations we have around the capital, and to look at ways to add to that. But as you say, £2.1 million, an extraordinary amount of money. I think 400 art installations have come from it, so that's £5,000 a pop. And at the same time, congestion's getting worse, knife crime's going up, and house building isn't increasing. Yeah, so the stuff that people actually care about. Now, again, this all goes back to Black Lives Matter and the toppling of statues, and we saw, you know, what happened in Bristol, and, you know, if you've been money's come from slavery, then your statue must go. The reality is, you know, an awful lot of people we've got statues to around the country, and certainly in London, are people from a distant past where a lot of bad things happened. A lot of bad things were done by a lot of people at that time. The world was a nasty, brutish place. We've moved on. You'd think we'd celebrate that, but so it's not only in favour of with this investigation of, like, taking down statues and artwork that commemorates people who are now judged to be bad people. But and should be unseen, but also commissioning work that is now considered work. But again, I'm wondering where the demand is for this. Well, yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you what really infuriates me about this. One of the projects has been a number of plaques commemorating major LGBT events in London's history. OK, that's all very well, but we give significant amounts of taxpayer money to the exact sort of groups that should be funding these plaques themselves if they're so important. You know,
I mean, taxpayers fund these organisations to a massive amount. But also, I mean, again, we're not... Again, I'm really, really happy that we have, you know, equal gay rights. That is something I campaign for, and gay marriage and like, but I don't necessarily think that the state should be paying for plaques for celebrating some march or something. I'm not quite sure. Again, I thought that's what we had charities and campaign groups for.
Well, yeah, entirely. And listen, anybody that's, you know, comes from a village, town around the country, you know, may well have some sort of local civic society that, you know, funds and fundraisers for various plaques to commemorate major events in a local town or a local neighbourhood. And, you know, it's entirely appropriate that the council or whoever needs to give permission to those plaques do give permission. And, you know, it's entirely appropriate that, you know, that there are some of these plaques designed and placed on, you know, London's buildings. But the idea that we should have to be paying it from ourselves when we already give significant amounts of taxpayer cash to these charities is for the birds.
It is bizarre. I mean, again, the cash was contributing. It included 5 rainbow plaques of a pride movement, a sound installation to highlight stories from working class women on the Olympic Park in East London, and a walk of fame, stars in the pavement to celebrate migrant workers in Cricklewood. I mean, a lot of people are saying woke waste. I mean, I would certainly say that. But also, it's this weird idea that we need to sort of wipe our history. We know what happened in the past. I don't think there's anyone alive today going, oh, it's a really, really, really good thing that black Africans were taken from their homelands and put aboard horrific ships and used as slaves, treated as cattle. I mean, no one's saying that. So why you know, if you want to have a plaque explaining, you know, what this person did, that maybe that's useful. But it's quite bizarre trying to sort of rewrite our history. That's the bit I don't understand.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd be far better off focusing on the problems that affect in particular the black community today, in particular knife crime, which is soaring across London, and where, you know, black kids are primarily the victims, or certainly disproportionately the victims, and yet Sadiq Khan seems to show absolutely no interest in that. If he wanted to focus on improving the lives of working class Londoners, he'd be focusing on decreasing the amount of congestions there is on the road, so that, you know, particularly van workers are able to get around, but he's not interested in those problems, and that's partly because he's caused those problems himself.
Well, indeed, but again, it's just about all this stuff is actually about dividing people rather than uniting people, which is one of the most frustrating things. Elliot Keck, thank you for joining us ahead of campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance. Just a quick word from Philip Ingram. I think you might have had some trouble hearing some of that, but you know the story. Obviously, the huge amount of taxpayers' money, £2 million plus spent on taking down statues and putting in woke stuff. I mean, again, none of this is needed. No one's asking for this stuff.
Exactly, and a waste of money. And we can't eradicate history. We have to.
We shouldn't.
We shouldn't. We should be reminded of our history so we can build on that and use that as a foundation for where we're going. Yes, put additional statues out in different places instead of, but
I don't mind information about people. Like this person was celebrated at this time, but actually now we take a different view. That's fine.
Exactly.
But I don't want our history eradicated. You can't see the progress that human beings have made and our society has made if you don't know the past as well. Let's talk about progress. Ian Collins is here. Are we making progress, my love?
Well, no, of course we're not making progress. We have this really weird reverse gear that we've kind of just gone into. If you told people in the 1960s, come and have a look at the 21st century, kids, see what 2025 looks like. It's amazing. You go, a man is a woman, a woman's a woman. What?
You're all
really? Seriously? Is this a conversation when people have to qualify that there's two genders?
We're ashamed of our country.
And that's controversial to say that kind of stuff.
It's a noise. My view is always on government, whether it's mayors or local government, or when you've got all the basics done, when you've got the basics done, maybe there's a bit of spare cash. A, give it back to people in the pockets, or B, spend it on, only then spend it on this periphery stuff. But there is no reason